And we are live for week 15. Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? It is the fantasy football playoffs. It is time to lock in. This is what it's all about, guys. We got to make the right start sit decisions today, and we advance one round at a time, one game at a time. I'm pumped to get after it. A lot of very good football games on our TV screens in just about 4 hours. We're just getting started. This is likely going to be the longest live stream of the season. I'm pumped, man. It's going to be great. A lot of games to get through. We are going to go game by game like we've been doing over the past several Sunday morning lives. Good morning, everyone who's in here right at the beginning, starting a couple minutes early today because there is a lot to get through. Let's start with the banger of a football game today between the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Giants. Guys, if you're already tuned into the YouTube live, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. We're going to get to that Chargers game. I'm already seeing a bunch of Lad McConkey questions. We're going to get there, I promise. We're going to go through every single game. We're going to talk about every single relevant player in every single game. We're going to talk about my 3 favorite player props for the day. We're going to talk about my DraftKings lineup for today. I had my greatest DraftKings lineup of all time last week, 210 points from the DK lineup last week. And of course, it comes on a week where Josh Allen breaks fantasy football and was not in the DraftKings lineup. So only, I think it was like a 5X, 6X lineup. Could have been a first place lineup on a different week. But we got another DK lineup today I feel good about as well. Let's start with the biggest, the most lopsided game of the week, maybe the most lopsided game of the season. We got the Baltimore Ravens going to MetLife. The New York Giants have not won in MetLife in years. The Ravens are 16.5-point favorites in this game. You got to bake in a little bit of concern of a huge blowout in this game to the point where the starters for the Ravens are not playing in the fourth quarter or sooner. Very possible. But as we've gone through this season, and even in the games where this actually ends up happening, you think back to one of those Lions games, if that ends up happening and the Ravens blow out the Giants by so much that their starters are not playing in the fourth quarter, you probably wanted to play those starters in fantasy football. They probably scored a lot of fantasy points already by the fourth quarter if they're doing so well that they're getting benched. So we're starting Lamar Jackson with ease this week. Let me hop over to the QB ranks here in the TikTok live. We'll hop over in the YouTube live as well. We'll start out with the QB rankings. There's really only one quarterback I want to play more than Lamar Jackson today. And really, if you're going up against Josh Allen in fantasy football in the first round of the fantasy football playoffs, good luck. And I really think Lamar Jackson's the one other quarterback that might be able to outdo Josh Allen today. Lamar Jackson, I think, should be closer in the MVP race than he currently is in the conversation with Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson's having an absolutely incredible season. There's going to be some MVP voter fatigue, of course, but Lamar Jackson, guys, he's leading all quarterbacks in fantasy points per game. He's been under 22 fantasy points once since week 7. The greatest rushing quarterback of all time. He's only scored 1 rushing touchdown in that time span, too. Derrick Henry's a must-start in this game, could easily score multiple touchdowns. I don't hate Zay Flowers in this one. Definitely like Lamar and Henry in the rushing attack the most here, though. Mark Andrews, he's startable in this spot. The Giants haven't been terrible versus receivers. They're among the seventh fewest points per game to wide receivers, the 3rd fewest points per game to tight ends. But again, the Ravens are 17-point favorites in this game. You don't see that in the NFL very often. So we're starting Lamar Jackson, we're starting Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews, they're in play too. The Ravens defense is going to advance people into the next round of fantasy football playoffs this week. I've had the Ravens defense stashed on my bench for weeks. I have been stashing every single Giants opponent on my bench in all of my fantasy leagues. And so, yeah, I'm riding with the Ravens in 4 of the 6 leagues I'm in the playoffs today. I got a couple buys where I didn't need the Ravens, but I don't think there's a defense you're going to want more than the Baltimore Ravens. The New York Giants, let's go over to them quick because there's a couple guys in play for fantasy for the Giants today, despite how badly they're expected to get crushed. Tommy DeVito is going to be starting at quarterback for the Giants today. The Giants' implied team total is at 13.5 points. This is the lowest implied team total that we have ever seen in the NFL since Kendall Hinton started at quarterback for the Denver Broncos. That was several years ago. Shout out to everyone who immediately knows what I'm talking about with Kendall Hinton starting at quarterback. Kendall Hinton was a wide receiver who, and I honestly do not remember the exact circumstances that led to Kendall Hinton starting at quarterback for the Broncos, because it was known several days ahead of that game that he was going to start. I remember calling him a must start in fantasy because you could start him at wide receiver or flex. He ended up absolutely tanking. Their implied team total that week was 9.5 points. This offense right now is on par with the Kendall Hinton Denver Broncos. It is really rough for the Giants with Tommy DeVito starting and arguably the worst offensive line in the NFL. Still, Malik Neighbors is a decent start in fantasy. Let me hop over to the wide receiver ranks here. Some very, very difficult wide receiver start sit decisions. I think by far the most difficult position this week is wide receiver. And Malik Neighbors is a part of that difficulty. And he's going to be startable, guys. He is leading the NFL in catches per game. He's leading the NFL in targets and target share per game. I mean, I can't remember another time where you headed into the fantasy football playoffs and you already know who's going to lead the NFL in targets and target share. There's still 4 weeks left to go in the season, 3 weeks left to go in the fantasy season, and there's no debate about who's going to lead the NFL in targets. It's Malik Neighbors. It is not close. Malik Neighbors is at 11.5 targets per game. That's 1.5 targets more than the next highest player, which is CeeDee Lamb. He's averaging almost 2 targets more per game than Garrett Wilson and Jamar Chase and Devontae Adams. I mean, truly insane volume. So he's startable. But what's the ceiling? I mean, he hasn't scored since week 3. This offense might not score a touchdown today. That's part of the problem for fantasy, for Neighbors and Tracy, the two guys you can really consider starting here. And Tracy is really, in my mind, more of a must bench this week. If he can't score, he's playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. The volume similar to Malik Neighbors should be there. He actually had a season high, or just behind his season high snap percentage. Last week, he was second highest snap percentage, second highest rush share that he's had of the season. He had 10 targets, by far the most of his season, 22% target share. So the volume, he's a volume-based running back 3 this week is where I put Tyrone Tracy, but pretty nervous for him in this spot. So Neighbors, he's an okay start. Tracy, he's just a desperation volume play. You know, the volume will be there, so he projects above a bunch of guys that are going to have a lot less volume than him, but his floor is really, really low in this game, and there's just not a ceiling for the Giants' offensive players today. All right, that is the Ravens-Giants game. I don't think I'd take the Giants with a 16.5, but man, it's tough to take a minus 16.5 spread in the NFL. So I think I would lean towards the 16.5 for the Giants. Don't feel great about that, but that's all we have to talk about there for the Ravens and Giants game. By far projected to be the biggest blowout of the week, one of the biggest spreads of the season. It might be the biggest spread of the season. All right, so that's the Ravens-Giants game. Let's hop over to the running backs. I talked about Derrick Henry here, and we're going to talk about some running backs in this next game too, which is the Commanders versus the Saints. I think we might actually have our Commanders Walter Picks creator joining the live stream later to talk through this game a bit. But man, this is going to be a good game. The Commanders are 7.5 point favorites. They're playing against Jake Haener. Coming off the bye week, the Washington Football Commanders. Jaden Daniels is a top 10 QB option. The only fear with Jaden Daniels this week is, will the Saints offense be able to keep up in this game? I'm not so convinced that that's going to be the case with Jake Haener and one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL for the Saints. We have a revenge game here too with Marshawn Lattimore playing his first game for the Commanders versus the Saints, and he gets to go up against Jake Haener. But sticking with the Commanders for a second, Jaden Daniels is a very good start. Brian Robinson Jr. is also a very, very good option here in Week 15. I think you need to be starting Brian Robinson Jr. if you have him. This is an incredible matchup. The Saints have been annihilated by running backs this season. There's been so many good running back performances, and we haven't really seen a huge Brian Robinson game this season. He hasn't finished top 10 among running backs in a single week. He only has one game over 20 points, and he just barely went over 20 with 20.3 back in Week 4. So we haven't seen him go over 20 since Week 4. He's been in and out of the lineup, though, with injuries. This is the healthiest he's been really since that last 20-point game. He came back in Week 7. He only played 37% in snaps in a great matchup versus the Panthers. only scored 13 points, but did score a touchdown. The receiving role hasn't quite been there for B-Rob, and this is a committee approach, even with Austin Eckler out. We're going to see Jeremy McNichols. We're going to see Chris Rodriguez play for the Commanders. But Brian Robinson Jr., he's coming off one of his best games of the season, the second highest rushing total of the season versus a much better Titans defense. Scored 18 points in that one, was the top 12 running back, scored a touchdown. He's got about as good of a chance at a touchdown today as any running back in the NFL. And looking at the matchup tab here for the Saints, and guys, we're live on TikTok. We are live on YouTube. It is the fantasy football playoffs. We got to get it right this week. Your process has to be right. You're not going to get all your start sits right, but the process has got to be there. That's what we're going to talk through today on the live stream. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, I'm telling you, come to the YouTube live. It is a better viewing experience. It is all of the same info that I can share screen. We're looking at the Saints matchup tab right now. And when you scroll over to the efficiency part of the matchup tab here, no defense is allowing more yards per carry to running backs than the Saints this season. 5 yards per carry. And we have seen some insane games from running backs versus the Saints. Saquon Barkley was at 8.6 yards per carry. Bijan and Algier were at least 4. We saw it back in week 6 and 7, where so many points were scored against the Saints from Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker. It was Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Estime. All of these guys absolutely smashed. All went over 5.5 yards per carry versus the Saints. Even Nick Chubb was at 4.5 yards per carry. Last week, Kyron Williams was almost at 7 yards per carry. Blake Corum was at 5.2. We're projecting Brian Robinson Jr. at 5.1 yards per carry today, and I really think that is a cautious projection. Could easily go over 5 yards per carry in this game. Could smash past that. We've seen so many running backs do it. So the floor is unreal for Brian Robinson Jr. I think the touchdown ceiling is really high for him too. He's running back 14 in the Walter Picks app. In any Brian Robinson start sits this week, I'm going to be pushing towards Brian Robinson Jr. There's really not that many running backs I'm starting over him. He's right up there at the top of tier 3. You know, I'd start the tier 2 running backs and tier 1 running backs over him. Guys like Chase Brown, Chuba Hubbard, Zach Charbonnet, Devon Achane, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry, James Conner, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Bijan Saquon. But that's pretty much it. I'm starting Brian Robinson Jr. over Alvin Kamara, who's on the other side of this game. We're going to talk about him in a second. I'm starting Brian Robinson Jr. over Aaron Jones and Jonathan Taylor and James Cook and Isaiah Pacheco and Mondre and Najee and Rashad White and Bucky and Breece Hall, who we're going to talk about. He's one of the most difficult start sits of the week. As tough as the wide receiver start sits are, there is some tough running back spots too, especially around the injuries with Breece Hall and Bucky Irving. We're going to get there too, but Jay Daniels, great start. Brian Robinson Jr., I'd put him in the must-start category today. Terry McLaurin is, I think, as close to the must-start category as you can get with maybe not being in it, partially because of game script concerns here, but this is not a bad matchup for him either. The Saints secondary has been horrible, really all season, even before Marshawn Lattimore was traded, but definitely after Lattimore's been traded, and there's not been very many receivers better than Terry McLaurin this season. If we hop back over to the wide receiver ranks here, because I think there's going to be some difficult Terry McLaurin start sits this week. We haven't seen McLaurin go under 15 points. He did it once back in week 11 where he only had 1 catch in a tough matchup versus the Eagles. Other than that, he hasn't been under 15 points since week 5. He hasn't been under 13 points since week 2. He's been about as consistent as it can get in fantasy football. He's number 12 in fantasy points per game this season. He's number 15 in yards. He's almost averaging 70 yards per game. And the real reason I think he's an even better option this week than usual, Noah Brown is out, guys. And this is actually a really low-key big deal here for the pass catchers. Noah Brown has been seeing a significant role in this offense. He's out-targeted Terry McLaurin in multiple games over the last couple of months. He only had a 13% target share last week, but in week 12, he had a 30% target share. We've seen 30% target shares for Noah Brown twice in his last 5 games. He's averaging an 18% target share. This is a big deal that Noah Brown is out for these other pass catchers on the Commanders. I think it's a big bump for Terry McLaurin and Zach Ertz, who's actually been pretty consistent this season as well. He's in play at tight end. It's 3 straight games with at least 12.5 fantasy points for Zach Ertz. He's definitely worth mentioning on this team. Obviously not a must start, but he's not a bad start this week. So McLaurin, I call him a great start. Brian Robinson Jr., he's a must start. Jaden Daniels, great start this week. There's only one quarterback this week with a higher rushing prop line than Jaden Daniels, and it's Lamar Jackson. I think Jaden Daniels' rushing line is even higher than Josh Allen's. So you got to feel good, and higher than Kyler Murray's too. You got to feel good about Jaden Daniels for that reason too. I don't hate the Commanders' defense here either versus Jake Haener. They're definitely in play as well. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, smash the follow button. If you're watching live on YouTube, hit the like button. I do appreciate it. And also, if you're watching live on on TikTok. Come to the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. Better viewing experience. I'm telling you, I can pull up comments on screen. I can share my screen. We're going to have a couple new, of the Walter Picks creators joining the YouTube live likely today to talk through some analysis and perspective for the games today. All right, that's the Commanders and Saints game. I really, we'll get to the Saints here actually first, but I really think the Commanders smashed the Saints in this game. 7.5 point spread. I think this spread should be closer to the Ravens-Giants game than it is to the Chiefs-Browns game. I have a lot of confidence the Commanders win this game. I don't hate their money line at minus 340. All right, let's talk about the Saints, though. There's only one player you can really start from the Saints, and it's Alvin Kamara. And this is not the same Alvin Kamara we're used to from most of the season. He's really dropped off over the last month. He's still had a floor because the pass catching role is unreal. He still had at least 12.5 points in each of his last 4 games, but he hasn't cleared 16 PPR points in each of his last 4 games. And we're seeing a bit of the Tyrone Tracy effect here to some extent, or at least what I'm scared about with Tyrone Tracy this week. There's just not that much touchdown ceiling here for Kamara. And Kendre Miller actually stole a touchdown last week. Kendre Miller looked pretty good. There's no reason to think Kendre Miller doesn't stay pretty involved this week. So he's on a bad offense with a likely awful quarterback in Jake Haener. He's still going to have the pass catching role, easily could lead the team in receptions like he's done many times this season, especially since all the receiver injuries. So in PPR, he's startable. I'm not saying Alvin Kamara is a must bench, but he's not a must start. He really isn't in all leagues, in all situations, and he doesn't have the same ceiling he had in the first month of the season with a healthy offensive line, a healthy Derek Carr. He scored 44 points back in week 2, guys. That's not a ceiling he has here in week 15 versus the Washington Football Commanders. So Kamara's not as good of a start as usual. We're going to get to that Buccaneers game. I'm seeing a lot of Bucky questions. We're going to get to the Chargers game. I'm seeing a lot of Lad questions. We're going to get to the Jets game too. I'm seeing a lot of Breece Hall questions. We're going to get to all of it, guys. We're going to get to all of it. Jake Haener is projected QB 30, dead last among quarterbacks. I put him, I think, in his own tier in the quarterback rankings. I mean, I would start Mac Jones over him. I think please don't start Jake Haener here in the fantasy football playoffs. Not that anyone is considering that. I don't see how the Saints could possibly win this game looking at their offensive roster. How is it possible they could beat the Commanders here? They have no Taysom Hill. They have no Derek Carr. They have no Chris Olave. They have no Rashid Shaheed. They're trotting out there with their best offensive player being Alvin Kamara, who's obviously solid. And then it's Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson actually did fine last week. I mean, he's going to have a real role in this game. He had 15 points. Last week, he was the tight end 3 because he scored 4 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown. So he's not the worst sleeper here. And Scantling, I gotta give at least some respect to Scantling because I've been very against Scantling. For 4 straight weeks, I've been yelling at people to bench Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and I've been pretty much wrong all 4 weeks. I'll take L's or I have L's. I'm not going to get everything right. I'm focused on process, over results. But sometimes if the results catch up to you, you got to acknowledge that the process might have been off a little bit. And the skill set between Scantling and Derek Carr did mesh well. He was a good Rashid Shaheed replacement. And he's now had 4 straight games with at least 2 catches, something he only did once. He didn't do once until week 10. So the role is there. He's clearly their best receiver. He's playing a bunch of snaps now. It's not like he's in this limited role. But with Jake Haener starting, we're absolutely not starting Scantling. I'm still anti-Scantling, but did want to eat the L a little bit there on the live stream today. And I think Kendre Miller will mix in. And of all teams outside of the Ravens, I don't see how the Commanders lose this week. I mean, there's almost no chance for the Saints to beat the Commanders in this game. I have extreme high confidence in that coming off the bye for the Commanders. So let's go to the Chiefs-Browns game next. Let's hop over to the must-starts, must-benches. I'll pull up the tight end ranks here too as we talk through Travis Kelce in this spot. Travis Kelce was on my do-not-draft list this season, and part of the reason he was on that do-not-draft list was I was scared about his role in the fantasy football playoffs. And here in this spot in Week 15, I don't think you should be very scared about Travis Kelce. I'm definitely nervous heading into the fantasy football playoffs that I had him on my do-not-draft list. The Chiefs still have a ton to play for, trying to clinch the 1 seed. The Bills losing was massive for them last week, but they're going to have to win out here. And they have a pretty easy schedule. They're going to have to beat the Browns in the spot. They're only 4.5-point favorites. But yeah, Kelsey's a must start this week. Let me hop over to the tight end ranks here on the TikTok live too. He's in tier 2 for me, only behind McBride, Bowers, and I think him versus Jonnu close. I honestly think I would probably go Kelce over Jonnu Smith if I had to make that call. Let's adjust that here on the YouTube live as I think through this. I think I would go Kelce over Jonnu Smith it's pretty close. Jonnu's been very good, obviously, and I think they are in the same tier. But both are decent options today if you don't have McBride or Bowers. McBride or Bowers in their own tier, even with Desmond Ridder starting, even McBride dealing with a small injury as well. The Cleveland Browns, they've been a good matchup for tight ends this season. They're allowing 10th most points per game to tight ends. Taysom Hill played a big role in that, though. Taysom Hill had the 42.5 point game versus them, and not all that was at tight end. But Pat Freiermuth, he was tight end 5 last week. He scored, was, I think, the game-winning or one of the final touchdowns of that game. 3 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown for him. Kelsey's got a pretty strong floor. Freiermuth had a 9.9 the first time he played them as well. They haven't played the best tight ends. Andrews had 14.6. Calcaterra had 10.7 when Goddard was out. I mean, Brock Bowers, he only had 5.1 back in week 4. That was a while ago. So Travis Kelce's got about as good of a floor as you can find outside of Bowers and McBride. Definitely a must start this week. There's some difficult Chiefs wide receiver decisions today, though. I have this exact decision in one of my leagues, Xavier Worthy versus DeAndre Hopkins. And I don't think this is as easy as Walter's making it look here. Between Hopkins and Worthy, I am going to start DeAndre Hopkins over Xavier Worthy. We hop up the wide receiver ranks here. Hopkins has been better than Worthy over the last 3 games, but Worthy's role is growing, and it's really been the touchdowns for Hopkins that's propelled him ahead of Worthy. I do think he's got a better chance at a touchdown than Worthy. He's only playing about 55% of the snaps. Xavier Worthy, on the other hand, he's actually been pretty consistent. He's got at least 4 catches in 4 straight games. He hasn't found the end zone at all. He's playing more than DeAndre Hopkins. Last week was a 82.6% snap percentage for Worthy. That was a season high, like a pretty wide margin. He had never had a game over 75% of the snaps till last week. That's pretty encouraging for him. The target share has been over 15% for 4 straight games. Xavier Worthy is an interesting sleeper here heading into week 15. I don't think people quite remember the ceiling for Worthy. He's been in a consistent role, but if he can get in the end zone, he's going to go over 15 fantasy points. He's going to be a top 20 wide receiver. He's got an interesting ceiling here. I think in PPR leagues, I lean Hopkins. Hopkins has been a bit more reliable. There is some weather to talk about in this game as well, but yeah, Hopkins is an okay start. Worthy is a decent, deep target as well in the flex. He's got upside. And then Isaiah Pacheco. We're going to get Pacheco questions today for sure. He's not a bad option. Let's hop over back to the running back ranks here on both live streams. Guys, if you're already tuned into this live, we are just getting started. Hit. This dude is just yapping, not answering my questions. Matt, we're going game by game. We're going to get to. Yeah, we don't have to. We're going to get to the start save comments. Don't worry. If you guys have tuned into these lives over the course of the season, nobody attacks the start save comments as hard as I attacked it. We're going to get to literally hundreds in this live. I got a good feeling we're probably going to go like right up till around 1 o'clock today too, to leave no stone unturned. All right. Let's get to Isaiah Pacheco here. So Isaiah Pacheco ranks as running back 19, just ahead of Ramondre Stevenson and Najee Harris. We haven't seen him go over 10 points since he returned, but the role is growing for Pacheco, up to a 46% snap percentage. Last week, we hit on the Kareem Hunt unders. Last week, that was a great call. You got to think this continues to grow. He had a 56% rush share, 14 carries versus the Chargers. It's not the best matchup here versus the Browns. About 40% target per route run rate, too. When he's running routes, he was getting targets. They were scheming him targets. He had 2 catches, only 6 yards. But he definitely has more big play ability than Kareem Hunt. It's clear they want to get him more and more involved. And he's got a good chance at a touchdown today. You can start Isaiah Pacheco with decent confidence today. And then Pat Mahomes, he's a back-end QB1. I mean, he just doesn't have the normal ceiling that we're used to with Pat Mahomes. He's been over 25 points once this entire season. I'd look elsewhere over Mahomes. There's a bunch of QBs that feel weird to start over Mahomes, but yeah, I would. Noah Gray also seems worth just mentioning quick. He's been incredibly consistent. He's got at least 4 catches. He's got exactly 4 catches in 4 straight games. Hasn't been under 6.5 points. Last week was his worst week. He only had 26 yards in that spot, but he's been playing a lot, eating into the Travis Kelce role for sure. Not an amazing start in fantasy, but definitely a sleeper worth noting. And then Harrison Butker, he's back this week. He's startable. He ranks as a top 10 kicker this week. All right, let's go to the Brown side of this game. Similar to the Commanders Saints, I actually think I like the Chiefs minus 4.5 here. I know that's not a I know a lot of people won't agree with that. I know the Chiefs games have all been close. This feels like a spot where the Chiefs could absolutely blow the lid off the Browns, though, and have one of the first big wins of the season for the Chiefs that isn't close. We got Jameis playing against the Chiefs defense here, one of the most turnover-worthy quarterbacks in the league. Not an awful fantasy option. We've seen a ceiling from him over the last month. He's been over 25 twice. He has at least 14 too, and in each of his last four, including these two games versus the Steelers' number one defense versus quarterbacks this season. So he's got a ceiling here, especially because I think he'll be trailing a lot in this game. Again, I'd take the Chiefs -4.5 in this spot. Jerry Jeudy is a borderline must start, guys. And again, there's going to be some weather to discuss in this game. Let's actually just pull that up quick, the weather in this game, because Weatherman Sam's here for you. Weatherman Sam's been here for you all season long, and there's actually a decent amount to discuss today. So this Chiefs-Browns game, there's going to be 30+ mile-an-hour wind gusts and scattered rain showers throughout the game. So we're hitting two different things here. The rain, I really do not care much about. There was more rain in that Thursday night game in the first half than I expected, than the weather report indicated. Bless you. Thank you. I still think Jerry Jeudy's a borderline must start, though, even with this weather. But there's some real concern weather-wise in this spot with 30+ mile-an-hour wind gusts. I do think this is a decent tiebreaker. If you're choosing between pass catchers in this game and pass catchers in another game that doesn't have 30+ mile-an-hour wind gusts, I think that's reasonable. But Jerry Jeudy, there's no Cedric Tillman in this game. David Njoku is a game-time decision. We're projecting him out right now. And I think if Njoku plays, he's not going to be at full steam. I mean, Jerry Jeudy could hit a 40% target share in this game. Would not be that surprising. We actually haven't seen him see even these crazy target shares. Him and Elijah Moore. I think Elijah Moore actually might benefit from this weather report. The Chiefs have struggled the most for slot receivers across all the different types of receivers this season. The slot is where you can attack the Chiefs defense. With no Cedric Tillman, potentially no David Njoku, Elijah Moore is also a very interesting sleeper in this game. Only 11% target share last week, but he was over 17% in the 5 games before that. I think he goes over 17% target share again today. We got him projected in the Walter Picks for a 21% target share. Interesting floor for Elijah Moore today. You can't start these running backs. Do not start Jerome Ford. Do not start Nick Chubb versus the Chiefs. Even with this weather report, maybe pushing him a little more run heavy. No defense has been better than the Chiefs versus running backs. And I don't really want to start Jordan Akins here, even if Njoku's out. He projects well. The Chiefs have been bad versus tight ends. I have absolutely no faith, though, in Jordan Akins. So Jeudy is a very good start. Elijah Moore is a very sneaky good start as well. Winston's got a ceiling. I think I'd prefer to bench him, though, with this weather report. All right, that's the Chiefs-Browns game. Again, we're going game by game here. We're going to talk about every single relevant player in every single game. I'll give you my take on every single game. We'll talk about everything you need to know for every single game, and we're going to get to the start-sit questions, I promise. Someone's asking, where's Puka in these rankings? Yeah, so these are rankings for the rest of the week. If you already played, you are not in the rankings. If you guys are watching live on TikTok, hit the follow button. I cannot see your comment if you're not following. If you're watching live on YouTube, shout out to you. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button too. I do appreciate it. It's the fantasy football playoffs, man. It is finally here, and there's a lot of good games to talk through. Let's hop over to this Bengals-Titans game next. Definitely a lot of startable players here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's hop over to, let me know in the TikTok live, what positional rankings you want to see next. We're on the wide receivers right now. I'll hop over to the wide receivers on the YouTube live as well. Obviously, 2 good wide receivers to talk through in this Bengals game. Jamar Chase projects as wide receiver 1, despite the Titans being pretty good versus receivers this season. Doesn't really matter. Both Chase and Joe Burrow doesn't really matter who they're playing. Jamar Chase is number 1 in fantasy points per game this season at 24.4, having an absolutely incredible season. 4 straight games over 20 fantasy points. He's now had 6 straight games with at least 6 catches. Not only is the ceiling unreal for Jamar Chase, but the floor is really unmatched as well. I mean, you could make an argument he's in his own tier. You know, I put Nico and Jefferson and Amon-Ra and Tyreek in the same tier 1 as him, but you could make an argument he's alone in tier 1. And Joe Burrow, he's got to be started this week too. Don't really care about the matchup. There's some weather in this game too that we'll talk about in a second. I think the weather here is, just some potential light rain projection. There's a bunch of games with like basically the same weather projection this week. Several games with light rain projection. Bengals and Titans is one of them. Cowboys, Panthers, Steelers, Eagles, Packers, Seahawks. I'm not concerned at all about the weather in this game. So we're starting Joe Burrow unless you have Josh Allen, unless you have Lamar Jackson, you're starting Joe Burrow. I really think those are the only two guys to start over Joe Burrow this week. Chase Brown, he's a must start. He is in an incredible role. He's in the Kyren Williams role. He's playing over 80% of the snaps. He's seeing basically every single running back carry, and he's getting significant targets too. He had 8 targets last week. The third time in the last four games we've seen Chase Brown go for at least 7 targets. You don't see that from running backs. He had 11 back in week 10. Man, got a great chance at a touchdown. He didn't score a rushing touchdown last week, but he had 6 catches for 65 and a receiving touchdown, scored 24 fantasy points, was running back 5. He's been a top 5 running back in 3 of his last 5 games. He's been a top 10 running back in 5 consecutive weeks. Must start. Chase Brown, for sure. Must start. And then there's T. Higgins, who I wouldn't put T. Higgins as a must start. There was actually a comment I saw before I hopped on the live today that I think I would not start T. Higgins. I would start Ladd McConkey over T. Higgins. I think Ladd McConkey's playing today, guys. I do. I thought he was playing last week. I was wrong about that. And he is a game time decision, which is a tough spot to be in for fantasy. But man, Ladd has an unreal matchup. Ladd had a 50% target share in his last game. So yeah, that's one guy I'd start over T. Higgins. I start CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Waddle. I start Jerry Jeudy over him. I start DJ Moore over T. Higgins as well. I would start A.J. Brown over him as well. The ceiling is obviously there for T. Higgins. We saw it the floor show up last week. Only 2 catches. He played still a huge role, snaps-wise, but only 11% target share. He can get schemed out of games with Jamar Chase and Chase Brown taking the bulk of the work. And no one else on this team is really startable. You could do much worse than the Bengals defense, but there's some defenses I like more than them as well. The Bengals are 5.5-point favorites in this game versus the Titans. The Titans just lost to the Jaguars. They didn't score a touchdown versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Bengals defense obviously is bad too. But I don't know how you think the Titans could beat the Bengals in the spot. The Bengals are still in the playoff hunt. Technically, they got to win out, and they need some things to go their way. I would love to see the Bengals in the playoffs. That would be a lot of fun. There's really not a single Titans player that you can feel great about this week. Nick Westbrook, all I do score touchdowns. Akine finally stopped scoring touchdowns. He's definitely not startable this week. No touchdown last week for the first time since week 10. He's still averaging about a touchdown per game since week 6. Not a bad matchup, obviously, versus the Bengals. Calvin Ridley is startable, but you don't feel great starting him. His role changed a little bit last week. We'll see if it bounces back to the normal role for Calvin Ridley this week. But he had 7 catches, 59 yards. The air yards just weren't there. He had a huge target share, 38%, but only 75 air yards, the fewest he's had since week 4. Like 12 targets, only 75 air yards. His air yards per target were the lowest of his season since week 4. He was getting all these targets right around the line of scrimmage. Not the types of targets you want. He still had 44% of the air yards for the team because the target share was crazy. So he's got a ceiling here this week and not the worst floor, but there's just not that much touchdown opportunity for the Titans. It's not a bad matchup again. So he's startable, but not a must start. Tony Pollard, he was questionable for this game. He's going to play. Let's hop over to the running back ranks again quick. Tony Pollard's definitely not the easiest start-sit decision this week because of the injury. He's been really good this season, and this is not a bad matchup for Tony Pollard. He had 102 yards last week versus the Jags, despite the whole Titans offense doing nothing. 21 carries for a 75% rush share. He's an okay start. I'm pretty scared to start Tony Pollard this week. I do think there's a good chance Spears plays a bit more with the injury for Pollard that he's dealing with. I believe it's an ankle injury for Pollard that kept him out of practice multiple days this week. We did see the snap share jump up a bit for Spears last week too at 38%. He didn't take too much work, only 6 carries, only 2 targets. But there's definitely a chance that if they get in the red zone, Spears ends up getting the touchdown. Definitely Spears will eat a little bit into the target share as well. So Pollard's an okay start, but definitely not a must start here in week 15. Calvin Ridley's an okay start, definitely not a must start. Please don't start Nick Westbrook. All I do is score touchdowns. Akine, Will Levis is well off the radar. So is basically everyone else. A revenge game here for Tyler Boyd. Not much to get excited about. He had 1 catch last week. He did play 60% of the snaps, but notable that Tyler Boyd is in a revenge game this week. I would take the Bengals here, -5.5 as well. I feel like this spread should be closer to what the Commanders spread is versus the Saints, 7.5. All right, let's hop to the next game. We got the Dolphins and the Texans. Brian Robinson or Jordan Addison. Yeah, I'm not benching Brian Robinson this week. we're going to get to all the start sit comments, guys. We're going to get to hundreds and hundreds of start sit comments. We're going game by game. We're over a quarter of the way through already. We got another 6, 7, 8 games to talk through. Several of the biggest games, too, still to talk through. So, still several of the biggest players, too. We're going to get to Breece Hall. We're going to get to Ladd McConkey. We're going to get to Bucky Irving. Bucky and Ladd in that same game in the late window today. And then we're going to talk about the free player prop. We're going to get to the DraftKings lineup. We're going to get to the start-sit decisions in the comments, too. There's some tough ones today for sure. I'm pumped to get after it. All right. So the Dolphins. I got Tua at QB4 this week. Walter has Tua projected as QB4. I think Tua's last month is really flying under the radar right now. He hasn't been under 23 fantasy points, guys, in 4 straight games. I mean, there's not been as consistent of a QB, really. There's not been very many as consistent as Tua. You know, looking across the league, how many quarterbacks have been at least 23 fantasy points in 4 straight games and now get arguably the best matchup amongst all of those games? You know, the Raiders are probably a slightly easier matchup, but there's a really strong floor here for Tua. The offense is really starting to click. Waddle's starting to get hot. Tyreek Hill is starting to pick it up. Both Tyreek and Waddle are must starts this week. If I go to the wide receiver ranks, there's not very many guys you can really start over Waddle. Judy versus Waddle with the weather report for that Browns game, I think I'm okay going Waddle over Judy. I wouldn't play Waddle over London or Adams or Evans or DJ Moore, AJ Brown or Cortland Sutton. And Tyreek Hill's a definite must start. Tight end, yeah, I'll pull up the tight end ranks here, especially as we talk through Jonnu Smith, who's firmly a part of the tight end ranks this week. I didn't end up going with the Tua, Tyreek, Waddle / Jonnu stack in my DraftKings lineup. I strongly considered it. I ended up going a slightly different way. I think this will be a pretty popular stack for good reason. The Texans have really struggled versus wide receivers this season. They've been the 5th worst defense in terms of fantasy points allowed this season. And we've been on this all season. They've been absolutely crushed by receivers in the slot, which is why I really like Waddle today. I think he's an absolute must start in almost all leagues. Like I just saw a comment in the TikTok live, Jalen Waddle or Tyrone Tracy. Like that is not even remotely close. You got to go with Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle could easily score 2 touchdowns today. Tyrone Tracy will not score 2 touchdowns today. These are 2 very different offensive situations in game environments, but for those 2 players. Tyreek Hill coming off a season-high 10 catches, had his first game over 100 yards last week versus the Jets since week 1. Scored a touchdown as well. He played a season-high 97% of the snaps. You can feel that the Dolphins know this is the final stretch to get into the playoffs. They're firmly in the playoff hunt still if they keep winning. A 31% target share for Tyreek last week. You got to be starting Tyreek Hill. I mean, he's got easily wide receiver 1 overall stealing. He's in tier 1 for me with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra. He's in that tier. And Jalen Waddle's not far behind. He really isn't that far behind. They're only 8 spots apart in the rankings. Jalen Waddle's been over 20 points in 2 of his last 3 games. Hasn't been under 11 in 3 straight. He had a season-high catches last week with 9. Went for 99 yards. 3rd time this season, he's gone over 90 receiving yards. 2nd time in his last 3 games, he got at least 50 yards in 4 catches in 3 straight. And now he gets an unreal spot versus the Texans. I could argue with you that this is the best matchup of the season for Jalen Waddle, who largely operates out of the slot for the Dolphins. So, yeah, we're starting Jalen Waddle for sure. And you kind of have to start Jonnu Smith, too. You know, I said earlier, I think I disagree with my original ranking, and I actually changed it on the YouTube Live. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, come to the YouTube Live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. It's a better viewing experience. I can share screen. I can adjust rankings as well. But Jonnu Smith, he's pretty close to Kelsey. You know, I don't think it's crazy to start him over Kelsey. I would start Kelsey over Jonnu, even with the weather report there for the Chiefs, with a 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gust in that Chiefs-Browns game. But Jonnu Smith's been incredibly consistent. He hasn't been under 7.5 points since week 8. He hasn't been under 6 points since week 4. Jonnu Smith has the 4th most receiving yards per game among tight ends this season, 53 yards per game. He's got more yards per game than Travis Kelce, more yards per game than TJ Hawkinson and Dallas Goedert and Hunter Henry and Kate Otten and David Njoku and Evan Ingram. I mean, he's been incredible this season. The only tight ends with more yards per game than him, I mean, you can see the tiers here. McBride, Kittle, and Bowers, who are, you know, definitely a tier above Jonnu Smith. And Jonnu Smith actually had 0 points last week until overtime. And then he had 3 catches, 44 yards in the game-winning touchdown in overtime, finished as a top 7 tight end in fantasy. Not the best matchup here for Jonnu, which is why I think I would start Kelsey over him. But yeah, he's really a must-start in most leagues unless you have McBride, Bowers, or Kelsey, or you already started Kittle. So we're starting Tua. I didn't talk much about Achane yet, but you're going to have to start Achane. 100%, you have to start Achane. He's been incredibly consistent. He's actually been extremely inefficient this season, and it hasn't really mattered. He's sort of in the Alvin Kamara role right now for the Dolphins, where the reception volume is just there. He's actually the only player averaging more catches per game this season at running back than Achane is Kamara. That's it. He's averaging almost 5 catches per game. He's got 14 catches in his last 2 games. I mean, he saw a season high 83% snap share last week. He actually got taken out of the game briefly for a concussion too. Raheem Mostert didn't play last week though. He is going to be active this week, but Mostert has not been himself, or what we're used to Mostert being what he was last season. Mostert led the NFL in touchdowns last season, guys. And he's been totally irrelevant this season. We saw a season high rush share for Achane, but yeah, the efficiency has been awful. Look at this for the efficiency. If you're watching live on YouTube, let me hop back over to the running back ranks here. I'm seeing some Stone Smart questions too. I got the tight end ranks up. Yeah, so Stone Smart, he's actually going to be in the DraftKings lineup today. He's an interesting sleeper, but I think Ladd's going to play. I don't think you want to force Stone Smart into fantasy lineups unless suddenly Ladd McConkey's ruled out and you have the opportunity to pivot to him. You know, if you have like Tucker Kraft or something, that's maybe something to consider, but I still think I'd go Tucker Kraft there. Yeah, so Devon Achane, he's at the top of tier 2 in PPR leagues. He's right at running back 8 this week. You really can't bench him. In PPR, the efficiency hasn't been there like it was last season. He's been under 3.5 yards per carry in 3 straight games, 1.7 yards per carry last week. I mean, brutal efficiency, but he got in the end zone. He had 6 catches. He's got a good chance at a touchdown. He's got the goal line role in the red zone role really unlocked right now for the Dolphins. Always possible Mostert mixes in there, but with the receiving role he has, got to be starting Achane too. That's pretty much it for the Dolphins here. Let's hop over to the Houston Texans. This is a big game for both these teams trying to get into the NFL playoffs. The Dolphins in this game, 3-point underdogs in Houston. Joe Mixon is a top 3 running back. He needs to be started. Nico Collins ranks as wide receiver 2, only behind Jamar Chase. There is a very good chance that it is Nico who is the wide receiver 1 the rest of the season over these last 3 games against the Ravens in week 17. Not a great matchup here versus the Dolphins, but it does not matter. Matchup does not matter for Nico Collins. His role is unreal. He had a 33% target share, 11 targets in his last game. We haven't seen him under a 20% target share once. CJ Stroud, really not a QB I want to start. Versus the Dolphins, he hasn't been over 20 points, CJ Stroud, since week 4. That was the only time he's done it all season. I mean, so many of the touchdowns for the Texans are coming through the ground through Joe Mixon. Tank Dell is definitely a risky flex option as well. I got to start it in one of my leagues today. Tank Dell versus Najee Harris. I'm going Najee Harris. I think there's a ceiling for Tank Dell, but not a guy you want to start. I like the Dolphins +3 in this spot with the matchup for Waddle, with how the offense has been playing. The only fear I have for the Dolphins offense today is they're missing 2 starting offensive linemen. They're missing at least one that was already ruled out. I think a second will be ruled out. If they can get pressure on Tua, that's gonna change the dynamic of this game a lot. But I have faith in the Dolphins offense to scheme out of that. All right, let's go to the next game here. The first game in years that the Carolina Panthers are favored. They're 2.5-point favorites at home versus the Dallas Cowboys. Now, let's start with the Cowboys side of this game. Rico Dowdle and CeeDee Lamb. These guys are both must-starts this week. Rico Dowdle's really come into a massive role down the stretch of the season. Back-to-back games with over 110 rushing yards. He had a season-high 76% snap percentage last week. Had a season-high 72% rush share last week. He set a new season-high in rush share in 3 consecutive games. 68%, 69%, and then 72%. He's getting targets in every single game, too. He's got at least 2 targets in 6 straight games. I mean, the role is elite right now for Rico Dowdle. He's only scored once in this stretch where he's getting a ton of volume. That was back in week 13 versus the Giants on Thanksgiving. But the Panthers are the best matchup for running backs this season. They rank dead last in fantasy points allowed. We were talking about the Commanders. They're really good. So the Saints, they're really good matchup too. 5 yards per carry allowed to running backs this season. That's 30th in the NFL, the 3rd worst. So we're starting Rico Dowdle in almost all spots. And we're starting CeeDee Lamb in most spots too. CeeDee Lamb versus Ladd McConkey, super close one. Again, I think Ladd's going to play. I want to start Ladd. I mean, there's really not that many guys I'm starting over Ladd. Again, we're going to get to that game. I think Lamb versus Ladd is close. I think I would lean Lamb if you want to play it safe and you're not 100% Ladd's going to play. I'd put it like 80-20. That Ladd plays. These are the only two guys you really want to start. And I saw some Jake Ferguson questions. The Panthers have been really bad versus tight ends this season, and Jake Ferguson is really the wide receiver 2 on this offense right now. Had a 19% target share last week. He's startable for sure. Jake Ferguson is startable in his spot. I don't have much faith in Cooper Rush, but he's definitely still startable. And no one else in the team can be started or trusted. And I do think the Panthers pull out their first win here. The Panthers have been very competitive over the last month. Bryce Young has really stepped into the role that people thought he would be in. You know, he hasn't been amazing, but he has been much, much better. He is sustaining a real offense. He's got at least one passing touchdown now in 6 straight games. For Bryce Young, he's been over 260 passing yards in 2 of his last 3. I mean, even against the Eagles, the Panthers really should have won that game. One Xavier Legette catch away from winning that game. And now they get a much better spot here versus the Cowboys. There is not very many players I'm more excited about today than Chuba Hubbard. So, you know, shout out to Jonathan Brooks. You know, hopefully he's able to come back at some point. Absolutely brutal stuff with Jonathan Brooks, you know, tearing the same ACL that he tore in college that he just came back from. I mean, just really rough to watch and to see. And, you know, definitely thoughts out for Jonathan Brooks. Hopefully we see him back at some point. But Chuba Hubbard is, of all the guys we've talked about so far, and we talked about a bunch of them already, even Joe Mixon, Devon Achane, we just talked about Dowdle. We talked about, who's the other one we were talking through with the role? I would talk about Zach Sharp, talk about Chase Brown. I mean, of all these guys, it actually might be Chuba Hubbard this week that's in the best role. He played 98% of snaps last week. He didn't come off the field. There was no running backs healthy in the game. I don't think he's necessarily going to play 98% of snaps this week, but it's him and Mike Boone. Mike Boone is his backup running back today. We might not see Chuba Hubbard come off the field. Like, very, very possible. He's over 90% snap percentage this week. Very possible he gets every single running back touch. He had 26 carries and 5 targets last week. He had 30 touches. And I think he's going to be close to 30 touches again today. He could easily be over 30 touches. How many guys can you go into week 15 and say they could easily be over 30 touches today? And then he gets a matchup versus the Cowboys. They've been the 5th worst defense versus running backs this season. They've been absolutely crushed by running backs. I mean, we've seen so many good running back performances. We really haven't seen very many bad running back games. So the floor is unreal for Chuba Hubbard. The ceiling's there too. Chase Brown was running back 5 last week. Tracy was a top 20 running back. Joe Mixon was running back 1 when he played the Cowboys. We saw Bijan be a top 10 running back. We saw Garendo be a top 10 running back. We saw David Montgomery be a top 10 running back. We saw Derrick Henry be a top 3 running back. Kamara was the number 1 running back when he played the Cowboys back in week 2. Jerome Ford back in week 1. He was a top, like every single week we're seeing top 12 running backs versus the Cowboys. Chuba Hubbard's going to be a top 12 running back today. The floor is elite. The ceiling's elite. You got to start Hubbard. In all spots, you got to start Hubbard. He's a tier 1 running back this week. I got him at the top of tier 2, actually. But yeah, he's up there. I really don't think you can bench him. Tight end list, yeah, I got you. Let me know in the TikTok live what rankings you guys want to see next. Jalen Coker is going to be back this week. I know we're going to get a bunch of Adam Thielen questions. It's really unclear exactly how Jalen Coker returning is going to impact Thielen and Legette. I don't think it's going to impact them much, ultimately, though. If anything, it's just going to push David Moore off the field and Jalen Coker, who's been playing out of the slot mostly. This is why it's a little intriguing about how Coker is going to impact Thielen, because they both have primarily played out of the slot this season, and they haven't really overlapped a ton when they both were playing. I think Thielen probably stays in the slot, though, with how good he's been. I think you keep Thielen in the slot. He's been over 19 fantasy points in back-to-back games. He's got 17 catches in back-to-back games. He's very startable here in this spot in week 15. He doesn't project amazing, but he doesn't project bad either. Wide receiver 29. You could do much worse than Thielen. And I won't knock anyone for starting Thielen over some of the guys that are projecting ahead of him. I'll pull the wide receiver ranks here again. Thielen or Higgins, yeah, like you kind of have to go T. Higgins, I think, over Thielen. Thielen versus Amari Cooper, Thielen versus Brian Thomas Jr., you know, those are close. We'll get to those later in the live too. So yeah, I think the Panthers get their first win here in quite some time. Again, this is the first time they're favored in a long time. All right, let's go to the Jets-Jaguars game. Another absolute banger of a football game here. We talked about Cowboys-Panthers. We talked about the Ravens and Giants. Now let's talk about the Jets and Jaguars. And there's some really difficult start sits within this game. The Jets are 3.5-point favorites. The Jets favored in this game. I feel like we've said this so many times throughout the season. How are the Jets favored in this game? Well, they got a matchup versus the Jags. That's how. They're in Jacksonville as 3.5-point favorites here. Aaron Rodgers, he's startable this week. Not a must start by any means. We've only seen him go over 20 points once. He just had 339 passing yards, though. It feels like we're seeing this down the stretch for Aaron Rodgers. Like he's just auditioning for his next team. Probably won't be for the Jets. And he's going to be throwing a lot because of that. They're going to be very pass heavy, almost regardless of what's going on. Rodgers wants to throw the ball. He wants to put up numbers here down the stretch, and he wants to make a case to be a starting quarterback in the NFL next season. Both him and Davante Adams are not bad for that reason. Davante Adams is a must start. Garrett Wilson is a borderline must start as well. I would start Adams over Garrett Wilson, but they're both very good options here versus the Jags. The Jags have been arguably the worst defense in the NFL this season. Somehow the Titans did not score a touchdown versus them last week. That was more of a Titans thing, though, than I think a Jaguars defense thing. So we're starting Adams, starting Wilson. I think Aaron Rodgers is an interesting sleeper. Not a guy I want to force into the starting lineup, of course, but you could do much worse than Rodgers. Let me hop back over to the QB ranks here. He ranks as QB 17 this week. Would be starting him over guys like, I would start him over Jameis Winston. That one's close. I think Winston probably has a higher ceiling, but Rodgers has a better matchup. CJ Stroud, I'd start Rodgers over. Drake May, Geno Smith, I'd start Rodgers over. Then there's Breece Hall, man. Let's talk about Breece Hall, because Breece Hall is probably in the top 3 most difficult start sits of the week. So Breece Hall dealing with a knee injury. He's had knee issues in the past. He tore his ACL, I think, of the same knee. He didn't play last week. He didn't practice part of this week. Came back to a full practice on Friday. He's going to play. Breece Hall is going to play. If you have Breece Hall, let's go back to the running back ranks here. If you have Breece Hall, you're really going to have to start him in a lot of leagues, purely based on the matchup here. He gets the Jags, guys, the second worst defense versus running backs this season. We just talked about the Panthers. We've talked about the Saints. The Jags have been even worse than the Saints this season. And if Breece Hall is playing, you got to think he actually plays. And I know Isaiah Davis has been playing pretty well, and Braylon Allen's mixed in throughout the whole season. And there's going to be some type of committee approach. Back in week 13, the week he picked up the injury, he played 62% of snaps. I think Breece will probably be between 50 and 60% of snaps today, but he's going to lead the backfield in touches. He's going to get at least 10 carries against a horrible Jags defense, and he's going to get at least two targets, 3 targets in this game. So he's a volatile, back end running back 2, high end running back 3, because of all of the situation here with the knee injury. If that flares up, obviously there's a lot of risk, similar to Grendo on Thursday night, but also he's probably going to be in some type of committee, but the matchup's great. The Jets are favored, and it's Breece Hall, and he's playing. So I think you've got to start Breece Hall in a lot of different spots. I got Breece Hall ahead of guys like Bucky Irving, who's in a very similar spot. We'll talk about Bucky Irving. I would start Breece Hall over Tony Pollard. I'd start Breece Hall over DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, Tyrone Tracy, Tank Bigsby. Breece Hall versus Rashad White. Really close one. Breece Hall versus Najee Harris. These are the guys I think I would start over Breece Hall. I'd start Rashad White, I think. Rashad White, we'll talk about the Bucs backfield, but really tough to parse through that. Najee Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, probably going to get more touches than Breece today in slightly worse matchups. Najee Harris matchup significantly worse. Najee Harris is purely a floor play, and I think that's how I'll approach a lot of the start sits with Breece too. Najee Harris versus Breece Hall. Do you want to lock in at least 10 points? Go with Najee Harris. Do you want a chance at 20 plus? You probably go Breece Hall. I do think Breece Hall has a higher ceiling than Najee Harris. A higher ceiling probably than Ramondre Stevenson and Isaiah Pacheco. James Cook versus Breece Hall. I'm going to go James Cook there. Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Brian Robinson, all playing them all over Breece Hall. So there actually probably will be a lot of starts that I say no to Breece Hall, and there'll be other ones that I probably talk people into. Tough situation with Breece for fantasy. All right, and then the other side of this game, the Jags. Brian Thomas Jr. is really the only guy I think you can feel good starting. Brenton Strange, an interesting sleeper. Evan Ingram's out for the season, suddenly. Evan Ingram out for the season, and Njoku's a game time decision date. Suddenly the tight end position is bleak again. Brenton Strange, an interesting sleeper. Yeah, but Brian Thomas Jr., we're projecting him over 30% target share today. He had a 40% target share last week. 12 targets. He's now got 22 targets his last 2 games. I mean, clearly they're making it a point to get their best offensive player the ball down the stretch here. And the Jets have not been a good defense this whole season. Really, since the coaching firing, this Jets defense looks better on paper in terms of points allowed than they actually are, you can feel pretty good about the floor and ceiling, I think, for Brian Thomas Jr., even with Mac Jones starting. He's going to have one of the higher target shares of the week. Brian Thomas Jr. or Keenan Allen, yeah, I think I'd go Keenan over Brian Thomas Jr. Yeah, I would. I would go Keenan. I got Keenan in tier 3. Brian Thomas Jr. is at the very end of tier 3 for me, and Keenan's towards the top of tier 3. Mac and Cheese Mac Jones, definitely not a guy I trust still. He actually did okay last week, 220 yards. I guess okay is maybe pushing it. He did beat his prop line, which I thought he would go under. He's got over at least 220 passing yards now in back-to-back games. They're going to throw the ball if they're trailing. And then Tank Bigsby, I would start him over Travis Etienne. I don't really want to start either of these guys, though. They're in a straight-up committee. Etienne's the better receiving back. Bigsby's the better rusher. There's not tons of touchdown upside here. Bigsby had a 69% rush share last week, 18 carries. So he's definitely a guy I would start over Etienne, who's really fallen off. 11 points, but all through the receiving game, 4 catches, 50 yards. Could easily be their second best receiver. Both of them aren't like must benches, but I'd prefer to bench both these guys. And I would take the Jets here, -3.5 versus the Jaguars in Jacksonville. All right, let's go to the next game here. We're on to the late window now. We only got a few more games to talk through. We got the Steelers, Eagles to talk through, Bills, Lions, Colts, Broncos, Pats, Cardinals, Bucks, Chargers. And then we'll get to the primetime games. And then we're going to grind through the start sits, the rest of the live. We're going to talk about the free player props, talk about the DraftKings lineup here as well. It is week 15. The fantasy football playoffs are here, man, and we got to get it right. We got to get it right. If you're watching live on YouTube, guys, hit the like button. Helps me out a ton. I do appreciate it. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, smash the follow button. I can't see your comments unless you're following. That is how TikTok works. And then let me know what position rankings you want to see. I'm seeing some people request tight end. We'll hop over to tight end here. All right, in the YouTube live too. Let me know what ranks you guys want to see next too. I'd love to see the YouTube comments helping each other out with some of these start sits before I get to them later in the live. All right, so the Steelers are playing the Eagles here. 5.5-point underdogs. Pittsburgh traveling to Philadelphia. This is a game that I think has an extremely wide range of outcomes. The Steelers have been incredibly tough to beat this season, but the Eagles defense is one of the best in the NFL. I don't want to start Russ this week. Najee Harris is purely a volume floor play this week. Najee Harris, we're in week 15, 14 straight weeks, 13 straight weeks minus the bye. 13 straight games, every single game this season. I've said it every single week. Najee Harris has at least 16 opportunities in every game. That's carries plus targets. At least 16 in every single game. And there's no reason to think that changes this week, even with Jalen Warren sometimes playing a bit more than him snap-wise, even with Jalen Warren sometimes being a bit more efficient. This team is going to get the ball to Najee Harris at least 16 times. And for that reason, he's startable, and he has a decent floor. Even in a tough matchup versus the Eagles, he's got an okay chance at a touchdown. There's going to be no George Pickens here. And last week, we saw Mike Williams just sort of step right into the George Pickens role. 3 catches, 36 yards last week. He only played 29% of snaps, but he had a 17% target share. He had 38% of the team's air yards. Like, the deep targets were going to Mike Williams last week. Definitely not on the fantasy radar, but his prop lines were set at like 17.5, 18.5. That seemed pretty low to me. Najee Harris, really the only guy I think that you want to start or that you can start. I don't even think I want to start Najee, but you can start him. Najee versus Breece Hall. We were just talking about that one. Yeah, so Njoku, I have him out of the tight end ranks right now because I don't think he's going to play. But his game time decision, he might play. But I also think if he plays, I don't think you can trust starting him. I really just don't think you can do it. Cade Stover underwent emergency appendectomy surgery last night. Not going to play today. That's a rookie tight end for the Texans. Already talked about the Texans game. All right, let's go to the Eagles side of the ball. Saquon projections running back 1, even though it's a tough matchup here versus the Steelers. Jalen Hurts, QB5, even though it's a tough matchup versus the Steelers. No reason to think Saquon isn't a good option this week. He only had 14.4 against the Panthers, but he went for 124 rushing yards, just no catches, no touchdowns. The receiving role hasn't been amazing for Saquon over the last 5. He only has 1 game with more than 2 catches in his last 5. But he's been over 100 yards, guys, and was this 7 7 of his last 8 games, Saquon's been over 100 rushing yards. So obviously we're starting Saquon. I'm a little bit more nervous for him this week than past weeks, just matchup, purely because of the matchup. But obviously we're not benching Saquon in the fantasy football playoffs. Obviously we're not benching Jalen Hurts in the fantasy football playoffs. And I think it's obvious that we shouldn't be benching A.J. Brown in the fantasy football playoffs here. He projects his wide receiver 7 this week. It's definitely some squeaky wheel narrative here for A.J. Brown, complaining about his targets a bit off the field. The squeaky wheel narrative, by the way, did not come through with Deebo Samuel. Man, that Thursday night game might have been the worst game of the season. Deebo dropping a wide open touchdown. Absolutely brutal for pretty much everyone you started on Thursday night other than Puka and maybe Kittle with how the tight ends are looking this week. But nonetheless, A.J. Brown, you really have to start him. If you've made it to the fantasy football playoffs with A.J. Brown, guys, you got to have faith in your probably first or second round pick, A.J. Brown, even in a tough matchup versus the Steelers. His prop lines today, they're at 82.5 yards. The pass volume hasn't been there for the Eagles. And even in games where the pass volume hasn't been there, we've seen A.J. Brown go for 20 points. And if the pass volume ends up being there and this game ends up being a bit closer than people expect, A.J. Brown could be the wide receiver 1 this week. That is the type of guy A.J. Brown is. Despite how the season has gone and how the last month has gone for A.J. Brown, he still has the 5th most yards per game among wide receivers, guys. This is still an elite wide receiver option. There's only 4 wide receivers with more yards per game than A.J. Brown. Puka Nacua, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Nico Collins. End of list, guys. Like, he's really up there in the top tier of receivers. I got him in tier 2. I would play Courtland Sutton over him. Feel very good about Sutton. We'll get to him. Tyreek, Amon-Ra, Jefferson, Nico, Jamar Chase. That's it. That's it. That's the only guys. So we're starting A.J. Brown, regardless of matchup or regardless of how he's been really over the last month. And guys, the floor hasn't been terrible for A.J. Brown. The ceiling hasn't been what you wanted. He's been under 12 points in 3 straight, but he hasn't been under 8 points a single time this whole season outside of week 9, where he got hurt in that game, I believe. Yeah, he didn't even play half the snaps. Every full game that A.J. Brown has played, he's going for almost at least 10 points. Like, there is a good floor, and the ceiling is there for A.J. Brown. Devontae Smith, on the other hand, he's a bit more of a boom-bust option. He did score last week, 4 catches, 37 yards. He is definitely one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL. At this point, 31% target share last week. Extremely talented wide receiver. The pass volume hasn't quite been there, though. I'm definitely less bullish on Devontae Smith than I am A.J. Brown, but he's startable, just not a must-start like A.J. Brown is. There's going to be no Dallas Goedert for the rest of the season. He's on IR now. That puts Grant Calcaterra in sleeper territory, but not a guy you really want to start. That's it, basically, for the Eagles. One of the most consolidated teams in the NFL. I would start DK over Devontae Smith, seeing that one in the TikTok live. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, smash the follow button and then let me know what rankings you want to see next. I'm seeing some people request running backs, so we're going to hop over to the running backs. I can't see your comments on TikTok unless you're following. And also, if you want a better viewing experience, you got to come to the YouTube live, where I can share a screen. I can pull up comments on the screen when we get to the start-sit segment coming up here momentarily. I think the Eagles do beat the Steelers in this one. And again, I have a lot of faith that A.J. Brown plays a role in that. They're 5.5-point favorites. I think I'd probably take the Steelers plus 5.5, but I'd take the Eagles to win. All right, on to the best game of the weekend. I really would argue maybe the best game of the season. I haven't seen very many start-sit questions with guys from this game, and that's not that surprising. We're talking about the Bills-Lions game here. Guys, this is a Super Bowl preview. Of all games this whole season, this is going to be the Super Bowl. If I were to predict what the Super Bowl is today, this would be it. The Bills versus the Lions, and the Bills are probably not going to get the bye. It's probably going to be the Chiefs. The Lions are probably going to get the bye. This game has massive bye week implications across the entire NFL. But I'm not going to be surprised when about a month from now, we're looking back and we're talking about this game and what happened in this game, because we're getting ready for a Super Bowl between the Buffalo Bills and the Detroit Lions. This is going to be a fun one, guys. This has the highest over-under projection of the season, 54.5. Josh Allen is coming off a game where he had the most fantasy points of all time. Guys, if we're going against Josh Allen today in the fantasy football playoffs, good luck, man. I mean, good luck. We are likely going to see another 30-plus point game from Josh Allen here. We're projecting him for 25.7 points in the Walter Picks app. Let me hop over the QB ranks here. That is the highest projection for any quarterback the whole season for Josh Allen this week. He's been over this projection in back-to-back games. And the Lions haven't been a great matchup for quarterbacks. It does not matter for Josh Allen. And we're seeing playoff Josh Allen show up now. And playoff Josh Allen runs a lot more. Josh Allen has at least 8 carries in 3 of his last 4 games. Josh Allen has not been under 20 fantasy points since week 5. So obviously we're starting Josh Allen. That's enough on Josh Allen. You guys get it. Khalil Shakir, Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman, all 3 of these guys, at least one of these guys is going to have a huge game. Wide receivers have been the position that the Lions have struggled with the most this season. They ranked 3rd worst versus wide receivers this season. 4th worst versus wide receivers in terms of fantasy points allowed. Only 3 defenses have allowed more fantasy points to wide receivers this season than the Lions. Khalil Shakir has been the steady floor guy for fantasy. He's had a really consistent role. He's got at least 4 catches every single game since week 7. Had 106 yards, 5 catches, and a touchdown last week. His best fantasy game of the season. He's startable for sure. He projects the best, but I actually think it'll end up being Amari Cooper or Keon Coleman that has the highest points in this game at wide receiver. Amari Cooper is coming off his best game of the season as a Buffalo Bill. 6 catches, 95 yards. He only played 53% of snaps, but he had a 38% target share, 14 targets for Amari. A lot of those run catchable deep down the field, so the air yard numbers there are a little misleading for Amari. But the way that the role for Amari lines up really well in this matchup versus the Lions. And same thing with Keon Coleman. We haven't seen Keon Coleman in a while, guys, but I've not forgotten about him. I hope you haven't forgotten about him either. We haven't seen him since week 9, the game he got injured in, I believe. He still played 78% of snaps in that game. But the 2 games before he got injured, he was breaking out. He had back-to-back games over 16 fantasy points in week 7 and week 8. He had 125 yards in that first game with Amari, 4 catches, 125 back in week 7. And now he gets an unreal spot versus the Lions. And he's fully healthy. They gave him a lot of time to recover. He was a full participant in practice. He was off the injury report. So I won't be surprised to see Keon Coleman step back into a pretty significant role. He's been playing over 70% of the snaps before the injury. He could lead this team in snaps after Shakir this week. Wouldn't be that shocking. There's a real ceiling for the pass catchers here. Again, Shakir, then Amari, then Coleman. That's how they're ranked. But all these guys have an interesting ceiling tied to Josh Allen. Dalton Kincaid is going to be back, I think, this week. He's questionable, but expected to play. Not a guy I feel great starting. He's probably a little underrated at this point. We haven't seen him go over 14 points once this whole season, though. So he's a risky start. And then James Cook, he had a really bad game despite all the points last week. I think that was the highest scoring game of the season last week between the Rams and the Bills. And James Cook only had 4.9 fantasy points, 20 rushing yards, 2 catches, 9 yards. That was it. Still not a horrible option, though, here in week 15 in this spot. The Lions are a bad matchup for running backs, but James Cook is a capable receiving back. He's got a decent chance at a touchdown in a game with the highest projected over-under of the season. So he's startable for sure. If I hop back over to the running back ranks here, seeing some people ask for that. We got James Cook, running back 18, like him versus Pacheco, Mondre, Najee, Rashad White, Breece Hall, Bucky Irving. He's right in that tier with all those guys. He's definitely startable. And this was the first game we saw James Cook go under 9 points since week 4. I mean, he's only been under 9 points twice this whole season. He didn't play in week 6. So he's startable for sure. He's got a floor and ceiling. All right, on the other side of this game, the Lions, who are favored, mind you, in this likely Super Bowl preview. As you watch this game, guys, you got to be thinking about the Super Bowl. I think this is going to be a Super Bowl preview. I really do. The Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery in fantasy this season has been absolutely unreal. Both guys must starts this week. Jahmyr Gibbs, I have him in tier 1. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to explode in this game. We haven't really seen an explosion game from Jahmyr Gibbs this season. We had one game over 30 points from him back in week 7 in actually a pretty tough matchup there versus the Vikings. He scored twice, plus he had 4 catches for 44 yards. I think this is the explosion game coming for Jahmyr Gibbs. I think the matchup versus the Bills bodes really, really well for Gibbs, and Monty's going to have a big role too. And again, he's must start too. But Jahmyr Gibbs could easily be the running back 1 this week in this spot. He had 6 catches last week, scored a receiving touchdown. I think he's going to have a lot of success in this game, both as a runner and as a receiver. He's got multiple touchdown upside. He's got 100-plus yard upside. There's really not that many running backs with the Jahmyr Gibbs upside this week. Now, I got him at the end of tier 1. I got Derrick Henry ahead of him. I had James Conner ahead of him too. We'll talk about James Conner coming up as we talk about that Pats game in a second. James Conner's an elite option this week. Trey Benson's honestly an interesting sleeper too. We'll get to that. But Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Bijan, Saquon, that's pretty much it. Derrick Henry. Then it's Gibbs, man. You got to feel really good about if you have Gibbs. I would be pretty nervous playing against Gibbs here in the fantasy football playoffs. And then David Montgomery, he's a must-start too. And Goff, Not a guy that I'm super pumped to start versus the Bills. Obviously, Stafford did really well versus the Bills last week, but he only finished with 20 points. Like he had 320 and 2 TDs, only 20 points. There was a couple of rushing touchdowns in that game. You could do much worse than Goff. We got him at QB 13 this week. I play Mahomes over him. I play Anthony Richardson, Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Kyler, Caleb Williams, Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Tua, Burrow, Lamar, and Allen all over him. I play Goff over guys like Sam Darnold and Jordan Love and Baker Mayfield. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's been bad for fantasy over the last month. I mean, we got to call it like it is. 3 straight games under 12.5 points for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Last week got outplayed by Tim Patrick, who scored twice. I mean, like both of those Tim Patrick touchdowns, my gut instantly as I watched it was, oh, that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then nope, it's Tim Patrick. But this is another big bounce back spot for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I do think he's a must start in fantasy, regardless of how he's done over the last few games. And it's not like the floor hasn't been there. He does have at least 5 catches in each of those 3 games. He hasn't scored. That's been the problem. He was on an insane touchdown run. He was like in the top 10 all time, most games in a row with a touchdown. He was like, had a chance to catch up to some elite guys for that record and then stop scoring back in week 12. He probably gets back in the end zone though here in week 15 in what should be a really high scoring game. We just saw receivers absolutely smash versus the Bills. Both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp last week did very, very well. Both went over 20 points. Both went over 90 yards. Both scored a touchdown. Puka had a rushing touchdown too. So yeah, we're starting him on Raw. And then Jameson Williams, I expect some start sits with him. He's a boom bust flex option this week, a wide receiver 3. He's actually been pretty consistent, at least 8 points in 5 straight games. He's got at least 5 catches in 3 straight. Is exactly 5 catches in 3 straight. But Tim Patrick's, growing into a real role. 20% target share, pretty consistent for Jameson Williams. Waymo Jamo's got a ceiling in this game that should be high scoring. He's got a decent floor too. He's startable. But Tim Patrick, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they could easily out-target him in this game. Sam Report obviously going to have a role. There's just a lot of mouths to feed for the Lions team. Both these teams, the Lions and the Bills, they're really built very similarly. Obviously a little different at the running back spot, but both teams have like 5 guys that you can spread the ball around to on offense and can beat you. I like the Bills, by the way, in this game. I think that the Bills will do very well versus the Lions defense. They're 2.5-point underdogs. I'm taking the Bills. Might be a preview of my Super Bowl prediction in about a month from now. All right, let's move on to a much different game here between the Colts and the Broncos. Projected to be like 15 less points in this game between the Colts and Broncos and the Bills and Lions. To put that Bills-Lions game projection in perspective, the Colts are 4.5-point underdogs here, traveling to Denver. Anthony Richardson is startable. Hop back over to the QB ranks here. Seeing some people ask for that in the TikTok Live. Let me know in the TikTok Live, guys, what rankings you guys want to see next. If you're watching live on YouTube, let me know what rankings you guys want to see next too. I'll pull up the QB ranks now. We're getting very close to the start-sit segment of the live. I see the comments coming in, guys. We're going to grind through start-sits. Hundreds of them in this live stream. We're just getting started here, really. We're just getting started. All right, Colts versus Broncos. Colts are 4.5-point underdogs. Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson, both good starts. Neither of them are must starts in all leagues, but Anthony Richardson's got a really good rushing role right now. We've seen back-to-back games with at least 40 rushing yards. He's got, in terms of carries, he's 29 carries, guys, for Anthony Richardson in his last 3 games. He's averaging almost 10 carries per game. And he's scoring rushing touchdowns because of it. 3 rushing touchdowns the last 3. He's been over 23 points twice. He's been top 10 QBs in both the weeks where he scored a rushing touchdown. He's got a good chance of rushing touchdown again this week. Jonathan Taylor, the role is there. The touchdowns are being vultured by Anthony Richardson. That lowers his ceiling a bit. And the receiving role is just not there at all. He scored a receiving touchdown his last game, but he doesn't have more than 1 catch in 3 straight games ever since Anthony Richardson took back over. But the volume is there. He's playing almost every single snap. He had 25 carries last game versus the Pats. Like, he's going to get to 20 touches, and therefore he is a decent start. Let's hop back over to the running back ranks here. Kamara or Tracy? Yeah, you got to go Kamara there. Josh Downs is likely going to be back this week, expected to play through a shoulder injury. We got Michael Pittman Jr. projected just ahead of him. Really tough to parse. Here, we haven't seen Josh Downs in a couple of weeks. He got hurt in week 12, only played 52% of snaps, but he was the leading receiver on this team before that. Josh Downs is really putting together an incredible season, both with Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. Neither of these guys are guys you can really trust. I do think Surtain is more likely to match up versus Pittman throughout this game than Josh Downs, so I wouldn't be shocked to see Josh Downs lead this team in receiving at all. It does push Adonai Mitchell likely off the field more. I've seen some people ask for the defense rankings. I'll put the defense rankings here on both lives. Definitely some very good defense options. The Ravens are by far the best. They're in their own tier. Like, if you have the Ravens, you have one of the best fantasy assets of the week. You know, the Ravens could easily put up 20 plus this week. I like the Cardinals versus the Pats too, the Vikings versus the Bears, but also the Chiefs versus the Browns. I like the Falcons and Commanders a lot too. Titans aren't bad either. All right, the other side of this game, the Broncos. Bo Nix is a pretty good fantasy option here in week 5. A very underrated fantasy asset this season. Bo Nix has had a pretty solid floor because of the rushing. He actually hasn't ran as much, though. Over the last month, he doesn't have a game with more than 5 rushing yards. You got to think they get back to that a little bit here. Coming off the bye in week 15 versus the Colts. A good matchup for him here versus the Colts. Ranks as QB 10 this week. You know, Bo Nix versus Anthony Richardson as a start sit is close. I would go Bo Nix over A-Rich, but it's definitely close. I think both guys have a decent chance of rushing touchdowns. Bo Nix has been definitely the superior passer this season. Not a must start, though, of course, with Bo Nix. But Courtland Sutton, he is a must start. Guys, you need to be starting Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton projects ahead of A.J. Brown. You heard how I'm thinking about A.J. Brown this week. I mean, Courtland Sutton's been unreal over the last 2 months. He's not been under 14.8 points since week 7, where he didn't play in week 7. He hasn't been under 14.5 points in a full game since week 5. He's got at least 6 catches now in 6 consecutive games. He's gone over 70 yards in every single one of those games. He's got a good touchdown upside. Not a bad matchup here versus the Colts. He's coming off a season-high snap percentage, too. I mean, everything's pointing to Courtland Sutton having an elite floor and ceiling. And he's the must-start on this team. There's not a single other must-start. I don't want anything to do with Javonte Williams. I would call him a must-bench. He got out-snapped and outplayed by Jaleel McLaughlin last game. You know, the prop markets have Javonte slightly ahead of McLaughlin. We have Javonte slightly ahead of McLaughlin in the ranks. I lean a little bit more towards McLaughlin just because of last game. He was the guy, but this has been an impossible backfield to predict. I mean, 1 week it's Audric Estime, the next week Estime's not even playing. 1 week it's Javonte, the next week it's Jaleel. Last game it was Jaleel. They just come off the bye. But yeah, you really can't trust these running backs at all on the Broncos. That's pretty much it in this game. Broncos versus Colts. I think I would take the Colts plus 4.5 here. Both teams coming off the bye, which makes it interesting. Let's go to the Pats Cardinals game next. So the Patriots, they're coming off the bye this week. They go to Arizona. They're 6-point underdogs in this game. Drake May playing behind what I would describe as the worst offensive line, the worst pass blocking offensive line in the NFL, maybe the worst offensive line. There's some bad ones, though. Definitely the Giants are in contention there. But Drake May has looked pretty good, at least from an actual NFL perspective. He's been okay from a fantasy perspective. He's had at least 19 points in 4 different games, half his games. This season, really off the fantasy radar, though, here in the fantasy playoffs. Ramondre Stevenson is well on the radar, though. Ramondre Stevenson has been streaky this season. We haven't seen him go over 20 points since week 9, but the role was really good in his last game, 78% snap percentage. That was the second highest or third highest of the season. He had a 58% rush share, 18 carries and 3 targets, over 20 opportunities, over 20 touches. For Ramondre Stevenson in his last game, the Cardinals haven't been the best first running backs. We just saw the Arizona Cardinals get absolutely destroyed by Zach Charbonnet, and you got to give the Seahawks and Charbonnet some credit for that. But not a terrible matchup here for Mondre or Antonio Gibson. Mondre, obviously the guy that's going to lead the backfield in touches, though. He's a decent start. Wouldn't put him in the must-start category, but he's a good start. I would start him over Najee Harris. I think I would start him over Breece Hall, who's a tough start sit this week. Hunter Henry projects pretty well versus the Cardinals. He's had a really good role for the Pats. He's had at least 9 points in 7 of his last 8 games. One bad game, really, he's had. That came against the Bears in week 10. But other than that, he's been really consistent. He has the 8th most yards per game, right around 50 yards per game. He's been Drake May's favorite target, really, since he took over. So he's startable. The Cardinals have also struggled a bit for slot receivers. Demario Douglas, an interesting sleeper. Because of that, he's got at least 4 catches in 5 straight games. Definitely an interesting sleeper. Him and Elijah Moore, 2 interesting sleepers out of the slot with their respective matchups this week. None of these other Patriots guys are startable. Let's go to the Cardinals, though. Some definitely must starts on this team. Let's start with James Conner, who you absolutely need to start if you have James Conner. He projects as running back 5 ahead of some really elite options. Defense ranks. Yeah, we got the defense ranks up. Let's hop over to the running back ranks, though, because you just can't bench James Conner in week 15 versus the Pats. Pats have been a overall bad defense this season. They rank around average versus running backs. James Conner coming off a very good game, 90 rushing yards, 4 catches, 32 yards, and a receiving touchdown. He had 77% of the snaps last week, and he also had a 78% rush share. This was the highest rush share of the season for James Conner. Tacked on an 11% target share, 10.5% target share. And the other big, like low-key big, not probably as low-key big as Noah Brown being out for Terry McLaurin, but in a similar fashion, Amari DiMercado is out. And this is low-key big for this backfield. DiMercado was having a very annoying role for fantasy where he was getting targets. DiMercado was averaging, he had 4 targets last game. He's averaging a 5% target share this season, 1.5 targets. He's gotten a couple carries. He's been playing over 10, 15% of the snaps in almost every single game this season. He's out this week. That's pretty much all going to flow through right to James Conner and potentially Trey Benson too. But yeah, James Conner has about as good of a chance at a touchdown this week as anyone in the NFL against the Pats as a 6-point favorite at home. We haven't seen a rushing touchdown for him in over a month. The receiving role has been there, at least 3 catches in 5 straight games. The rush share has been there. Again, season high rush share last week. So yeah, we're starting James Conner with a lot of confidence this week for sure. Kyler Murray, he's not a terrible option. He's been pretty inconsistent this season as well. Hop over the QB ranks here. He does project better than Bo Nix and Anthony Richardson, who we were just talking about. I think I'd probably play Jaden Daniels over Kyler, but it's close. I think I'd go Jaden Daniels over Kyler. We're going to adjust this. See if we get that start later in the live. DK or Rico, we're not benching Tyreek. I'm seeing a bunch of Tyreek questions. We're not benching Tyreek. Trey McBride, he's tight end 1 this week. He was questionable with a knee injury, but he practiced fully. He's off the injury report, no longer questionable. Trey McBride has been the best tight end in the NFL this season. He just hasn't been scoring touchdowns. I mean, him, Brock Bowers, and Kittle. They're a clear tier. I mean, it's actually like not even close. The tier is just so clear. You look at some of the numbers in terms of receptions. It's McBride and Bowers both averaging 6.7. If you look at the yards, it's Kittle, McBride, and Bowers. I think all in the 70 range. Somehow McBride has not scored a receiving touchdown yet this season. It probably comes this week. If it doesn't come this week, it's coming soon, guys. You don't average 71 yards per game and not score touchdowns. It's just a complete anomaly. There's going to be some regression to the mean here for Trey McBride sooner rather than later. You got to be starting McBride. He's tight end 1. Running back ranks. Yeah, I got you with the running back ranks. Again, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, you got to hit the follow button or I won't be able to see your comments. Let me know what ranks you guys want to see next. We're going game by game here. We're well over halfway through all the games. We're going to get through the start-sit comments here coming up momentarily. So yeah, you're starting McBride. You're starting James Conner. Kyler Murray's an okay start. A pretty good start. Okay is probably underselling it. And then Marvin Harrison Jr. is definitely an intriguing option this week too. He only had 8.9 last week, but he's playing almost every single snap. He's seen over 21% target share in back-to-back games. He's got 20 targets in his last 2 games. They're clearly making it a point to get Marvin the ball, and he's seen over half the team's air yards in 2 straight games. I mean, the air yards have been there for Marvin Harrison Jr. He's going to have upside in this game. The Patriots secondary, they have some good players, but overall, it's a bad defense, guys. This is a bad overall defense for the Pats. The Cardinals have a lot of upside this week, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is included in that. He's not a must-start, but he is a good option. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. at this point in the season is very underrated. He was overrated heading into the season. At this point, he's very underrated. That's it for the Cardinals. Again, I think Benson's an interesting sleeper with DiMercado out. It's possible he just steps into that DiMercado role, and this is a good matchup for him too. But yeah, not a guy you can really start. Tight end ranks. Yeah, I got you the tight end ranks. McBride's right there at the top. I think the Cardinals win this game by more than 6, by the way. I'm surprised they're only favored by 6. All right, the Chargers and Buccaneers. Let's get to this game because this is some really difficult start-sit decisions in this game. Let me also just refresh the news feed here to make sure we have not missed anything. Doesn't look like we've missed any reports here, but Ladd McConkey, he's a true question mark in this game. But the Chargers' latest report an hour ago was they were optimistic McConkey will play. They're optimistic. I'm going to be optimistic too with Ladd McConkey. And guys, if Ladd McConkey plays, you're going to want to start Ladd McConkey. You really have to start Ladd McConkey in most leagues if he plays. Ladd McConkey has been absolutely balling this season. His last 3 games, he was over 14 points, over 6 catches, over 80 yards in all 3 of those games. Guys, in his last game, the game where he suffered this new injury, it was a knee injury, I believe. He was already dealing with a shoulder injury that he was playing through. He only played 63% of snaps, Ladd McConkey, and he had a 50% target share. 50%. You don't see this in the NFL. You really don't. We saw Malik Neighbors do it, I think, back in week 2. More than 50%. It was only 12 targets, to be fair. No, they didn't throw that much. But the ceiling is absolutely unreal for Ladd, not only because of the role we've seen him be in, but the matchup here. The Buccaneers are one of the best possible matchups for wide receivers right now. They're all types of banged up in the secondary. They're missing several starting defenders in the secondary, on a secondary that's already struggled this season. The Buccaneers offense is capable of making these games high scoring. We saw Jacoby Myers, 7 catches for 67 yards. Last week, Adam Thielen had 8 for 99 and a touchdown. He had 23 points. Jennings, Debo, Pearsall all went over 12.5. Hopkins went for 28.6 versus this defense not that long ago. He scored twice. I mean, if you have Ladd, you're going to want to start Ladd in almost all spots. Some guys I would start over him: Jalen Waddle, Drake London, Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, DJ Moore. I'd start over Ladd. Some guys, CeeDee Lamb. I think I would go Lamb over Ladd. I don't know if I'd go Judy over Ladd. I think I would probably go Ladd over Judy. I know that my rankings are slightly different than that here. But there is some weather in that game. I'm actually going to adjust it here on the YouTube Live as we talk through this. Again, if you're watching live on TikTok, guys, we're also live on YouTube. Better viewing experience. We're actually going to have some guests on the live stream coming up later, which you're only going to be able to see them on the YouTube Live. You'll be able to hear them, though, on the TikTok Live as well. All right, we're moving Judy down to 18 because of the weather report. The role should still be good for Judy. No Cedric Tillman, and Njoku's banged up. But yeah, I'm definitely starting Ladd over him. I also really like Justin Herbert now that Ladd is optimistic to play. He ranks as QB 6. How about the QB ranks here again? There's not very many QBs I think you should be starting over Justin Herbert this week. He's not been as great of late. He's dealing with his own injuries. Back-to-back games under 14 points in good matchups. But that was without a full Ladd McConkey, and the Bucs have been the best possible match for quarterbacks this season. Does not get better than the Bucs. And again, they've been the best match for QBs this season, and they are dealing with additional injuries that they haven't even been dealing with all season. So yeah, I want to start Herbert this week. The only QBs I'm starting over Herbert this week: Jalen Hurts, Tua, Burrow, Lamar, and Hurts. Sorry, Tua, Lamar, and Josh Allen. I think there's an argument for Jaden Daniels, an argument for Caleb Williams, an argument for Kyler Murray, but I would start Herbert over those guys. So Josh Palmer, he's an interesting sleeper too, because this is a good matchup for him as well. Josh Palmer finally had his best game of the season. 6 catches, that was a season high. 78 yards, that was a season high. Last week played 86% of the snaps, that was the season high. 31% target share, that was the season high. Season highs across the board for Josh Palmer last week, but that was without Ladd. Again, Ladd's going to be back, but Josh Palmer definitely an interesting upside sleeper. Same thing kind of goes for Quentin Johnston, who was coming off an absolutely brutal couple drops in week 13, bounced back a bit in week 14, led the team in fantasy points with a touchdown, 5 catches, 48 yards. He's an interesting sleeper too. And then Gus Edwards, you really don't want to start Gus Edwards. He's startable in a bunch of spots just because he's the lead running back on the team and he's got a chance to score a touchdown. He's the most dependable running back on the team from the coach's perspective. He played 43% of snaps in the last game, only had 10 carries, but Kamani Vidal played more than him in the second half of their last game. And Kamani Vidal is better than Gus Edwards. Just straight up, he's a better running back. I think Gus Edwards is definitely a better receiver than Gus Edwards, and he actually outsnapped him. Last game, it'll be really interesting to see if Kamani Vidal continues that. I think Gus Edwards is a must bench because of all of that. You're going to want to bench Gus Edwards if you can. I got a lot of guys over Gus Edwards this week. Guys like Justice Hill, Guys like Julian McLaughlin, Sincere McCormick, who I don't want to start, Tank Bigsby. I would start all those guys over Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards has no receiving upside and is not the best running back on his own team. Let's go to the Buccaneers side. Sorry. I missed a big one here before we get to that. Stone Smart. This guy's middle name is Cole. Stone Cole Smart. Unreal name here for Stone Smart. You got to give him something for that. He doesn't project in the top 20 tight ends. He is going to find his way into my DraftKings lineup, though. He had 8.4 points last week. He's minimum priced on DraftKings. Will Dissly is out. And this is not a bad matchup for Stone Cold Smart. So an interesting sleeper. Not a guy I'm going to be forcing into my playoff rosters. Unless Ladd is a surprise inactive, then I might force him in over Kraft, but probably not. So I wouldn't be forcing Stone Cold Smart into the starting lineup, but I do think Stone Cold Smart is an interesting DraftKings play in a very intriguing sleeper worth mentioning. All right, let's get to the Buccaneers now. So the Buccaneers, there's a couple must starts on this team. Really only one must start, and that's Mike Evans. Guys, Mike Evans, he needs to average right around 100 yards per game to get to 1,000 yards this season. He's going to do it, man. I think he's going to do it. And one of these games, whether it's this week, next week, week 17 or week 18, he's going to pop off for 200 yards, and that's how he's going to do it. His ceiling is extremely high, but the floor is there too. He's been over 10 points in 3 straight games. He's clearly the wide receiver 1 in this offense. Not the best matchup for Mike Evans, but I really don't care much about that. So I'm going with Mike Evans in most spots this week. He's right up there in the top of tier 2. I'm playing him over Jalen Waddle, over Ladd McConkey, over CeeDee Lamb. And then you got the running backs here. And man, is this a tough call between these running backs. Bucky Irving was absolutely smashing before he missed some time with his injury. He was a top 3 running back in week 12 and week 13 in great matchups versus the Giants and the Panthers. Then in week 14, he tries to play through the injury, barely plays at all. He had 1 carry in this game. He had 4 carries. He only played 16% of snaps before suffering the injury. He's got a back injury, hip and back injuries. That's not good for running backs. I mean, we know the risk for Bucky. We just saw it last week, guys. Like, these injuries can easily get re-aggravated as a running back with a back and hip injuries. That's why I would start Rachaad White over Bucky this week. And the ceiling is definitely higher for Bucky Irving. And we've seen the ceiling. But Rachaad White's going to have a role too. And I don't think it's crazy to expect Rachaad White to have a bigger role than Bucky Irving, given the injury stuff going on with Bucky. So Bucky's not a must start this week. And he's a really difficult start sit in a lot of spots. I would start Breece Hall over Bucky Irving. We talked a bunch about him. I would start Rachaad White over Bucky Irving, Najee Harris over Bucky Irving. Tony Pollard, I would start over Bucky Irving. I would start Bucky Irving over DeAndre Swift, though, Jalen Warren and Tracy and Bigsby and Javonte and Gus Edwards, who we were just talking about. A.J. Brown or Ladd. Yeah, I'm going A.J. Brown over Ladd. I'm not benching A.J. Brown as much as I want to start Ladd. Cade Otton is startable this week as well. He's tight end 8 this week. He's fallen off a bit over the last few games. He hasn't been over 10 points since week 9. Really, since Mike Evans returned, the ceiling hasn't been quite there. He did have 70 yards last week, which was good to see. Not the best matchup for him, but he's playing every snap. He's seeing, consistent target share. He's definitely startable. Some tight ends I would start Cade Otton over include Tucker Kraft, Zach Ertz, Sam Laporta, Jake Ferguson. But I'd start Andrews and Hawkinson and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith and Kelsey and Bowers and McBride over him. Sterling Shepard is a noteworthy guy to mention here too. He's dealing with a foot injury. He is expected to play. He's had a pretty big role for the Buccaneers ever since Chris Godwin went out, really, but he's got 3 straight games with at least 4 catches. Off the fantasy radar, of course. Jalen McMillan, also worth mentioning, though. He had a breakout game last game. 22 fantasy points, was a top 10 wide receiver last week. Jalen McMillan, 79% of the snaps. He had 25% target share, by far the most of his career. Rookie wide receiver here, Jalen McMillan. A lot of hype for him coming into the season. This was his first big game. See if he can build some momentum here, but also off the fantasy radar with Sterling Shepard's role too. All right, that's the Chargers and Buccaneers game. I like the Chargers to win this one. The 3-point favorites at home. I like them with -3 as well. I do think Herbert, Ladd, the passing attack, Stone Cold Smart have some success today. All right, we got 3 primetime games left. Then we're going to grind through the start sits. We're going to talk through the player props. We're going to get to the DraftKings lineup. And we might even get a few guests on the live stream today. Guys, shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. It is the Fantasy football, playoffs. It does not get bigger than this. You got to grind out one game at a time. I seriously appreciate every single one of you on this live right now. I look forward to these all week. I can't believe we're 15 Sundays in, and we're really still just getting started on this live, so don't go anywhere. Hit the like button if you're watching live on YouTube. Smash the follow button if you're watching live on TikTok. I cannot see your comments unless you are following on TikTok. That is how it works. And guys, if you are watching on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. It's a better viewing experience, and I can share screen on the YouTube live. I can pull up comments on the YouTube live. And guys, there's a real chance that I don't get to do the TikTok lives next year. There's a real chance that a TikTok ban happens. So I appreciate everyone coming to the YouTube live for that reason here as well. All right. Not gonna go too much into that sidebar right now, but I do appreciate everyone coming to the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio. If you stay in the TikTok live, appreciate you as well. All right, let's get to the Packers-Seahawks game here. I just saw a question between Jordan Love and Pat Mahomes. Yeah, I'd go Mahomes. Quarterbacks, yeah, I got you with the QBs. I'd go Mahomes over Jordan Love. I'd go Darnold and Goff over Jordan Love. I'd go Jordan Love over Baker Mayfield and over Aaron Rodgers. I was pretty surprised. The Packers are only 2.5-point favorites in this game. To me, they're much better than the Seahawks. I might be underrating the Seahawks a bit. Josh Jacobs is an absolute must-start, top 5 running back option. He's in an incredible role. This team wants to be run-heavy too. We've seen Josh Jacobs be a top 5 running back in 4 straight weeks. This looks like Bijan Robinson's game logs here for Josh Jacobs. Over 21 points in 4 straight games. He's getting in the end zone. I mean, he has 8 touchdowns in his last 4 games for Josh Jacobs. He's got multiple games with 3 touchdowns. He's got multiple games with 4 catches and over 50 receiving yards too. I mean, incredible role right now for Jacobs. Not the easiest matchup. The Seahawks defense has been playing much better. Jaden Reed, he projects as the number 1 receiver right now, but man, none of these receivers can really be trusted. Jaden Reed has been really inconsistent this season. I mean, he's had a couple big games. He's a very good player, so he has a real ceiling. But Christian Watson and Dontavian Wicks both played more snaps than him last week. We got Romeo Doubs returning to make it even messier here for the Packers receivers. I'd steer clear from all of these Packers receivers in fantasy because they're extremely hard to predict and all very volatile. But Christian Watson, honestly, is the guy I would start over all of them if I had to choose, over Jaden Reed too. He's really starting to grow into a real role. Over 90% of the snaps in back-to-back games. He had a 37% target share in their last game. They didn't pass that much. And again, Romeo Doubs was out, so his role will probably go down a bit. And then Tucker Kraft, man, he's a top 10 tight end. I'm definitely a little bit nervous to be starting him. He has been over 10 points in 3 straight. He has scored 2 touchdowns the last 3 games. Like, he's got touchdown upside. Not a horrible matchup here versus the Seahawks. He's playing over 80% of the snaps. He's back-to-back games with a 25% target share. But with Dobbs back, and this offense just rotates the ball around a lot. I don't think Luke Musgrave's going to be back. Yeah, he's back at practice, but he's probably not going to be back for this game. He's probably not going to have a real role. Ryan, we're going to get to the DFS lineup for sure coming up here momentarily. We've only got 2 more games to go. On the Seahawks side of the ball, another week where you just need to start Zach Charbonnet. You need to start him. We were on it last week as a must start, and he was the running back 1. I mean, he's in the Kyron Williams role with Kenneth Walker out. Kenneth Walker is out again this week. At the receiver position, JSN and DK Metcalf, both good starts here versus the Packers. I think Jair Alexander's out again this week. But regardless, both these guys are pretty good. I would start Metcalf over Thielen. Yeah, I'm seeing that one in the YouTube live. I'm seeing a bunch of Thielen questions in the TikTok live too. I do think Metcalf is a decent start still. I know he hasn't had the ceiling really since week 7, really since the first month of the season. But he's still playing a very consistent role, over 75% of the snaps. He's getting over 20% of the targets in most games. The ceiling is still there for Metcalf. I'm not panicking on DK Metcalf. I would play JSN over him at this point. And then you got to bench everyone else. It's Sharp, it's JSN, it's Metcalf. You should bench Geno if you can. You should bench Lockett for sure. He should be on the waiver wires in most league. And Noah Fant, he ranks his tight end 20. I would go Pacheco over Bucky this week. Yep. All right, let's get to the last couple games here. So the Bears play the Vikings. We've already seen these 2 teams play, and it was a fun one. The Bears offense played really well. Caleb Williams was QB4, went for 340 yards, second most of his career. 2 passing touchdowns, also had 33 rushing yards, had 47 pass attempts. The Vikings are such a pass funnel defense. So Caleb Williams, QB7 this week. Good option for sure. Good option. DJ Moore, he projects as a top 10 wide receiver, guys. Do not bench DJ Moore. Do not bench him. We got DJ Moore ahead of Mike Evans. DJ Moore had an incredible game versus the Vikings last time. He was wide receiver 4 that week. It was the season high. Sorry, second best of the season. He had 2 touchdowns versus the Panthers in week 5, but 27 points from DJ Moore last time he played the Vikings. 7 catches, 106, and a touchdown. You got to start DJ Moore. All 3 of these receivers are startable, though. Keenan Allen's a good option. And Rome Odunze, he's coming off his best game, too. He had 20 points last week. Second best game. He scored twice, only 4 catches, but was back over 90% of the snaps. His target share has been pretty consistent, too. These receivers are not coming off the field, really. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze, all good options. DeAndre Swift, I put him in the must-bench category today. He's questionable for week 15, did not practice Thursday. He got a limited session in on Saturday. He's tending to a groin injury. Roshan Johnson's already out. DeAndre Swift clearly not at 100%, and it kind of showed in his last game. He only had 5 points, despite playing 80% of the snaps. Not a good matchup here versus the Vikings. You got to bench Swift. Find another option if you have Swift. He still might not even play. All right, on the Viking side of the ball, obviously we're starting Justin Jefferson, despite the Bears being a good secondary. The Bears shut down Justin Jefferson in their last game. I don't think they do it again, but a season low, 4.7 points, 2 catches, 27. For Jefferson, last time he played the Bears just a few weeks back. Aaron Jones is in a really good spot. He was dealing with a back injury this week, but he's going to play. He's off the injury report. He's definitely a good option against the Bears. They've been not very good versus running backs. Sam Darnold, he's outside the top 12 QBs despite absolutely balling last week. We had the Darnold, Jefferson, Addison stack in the DraftKings lineup last week and somehow didn't cash in the top 10 because of Josh Allen. But 347 yards, 5 pass TDs, but he doesn't get the Falcons this week. He gets the Bears. The Bears defense has been much worse of late. Not a defense I think to be overly scared of, but definitely better than the Falcons defense. Addison, definitely startable here. Top 26 wide receiver option. I'm not starting him. I'm not calling him a must start, but I'm starting him over DeAndre Hopkins and Brian Thomas Jr. I'm starting Jordan Addison over Adam Thielen. I think him versus Flowers is pretty close. They project like 0.1 apart. I'm playing Bucky Irving, over Sincere. I've seen that question. And then TJ Hawkinson, also a borderline must start this week. His best game of the season came versus the Bears. 7 catches, 114 in that game. Josh Oliver is back, and we've seen the snap share dip back down a bit for Hawkinson, but he's still in a really good role, still seeing at least a 17% target share basically every game. And with tight end injuries going on, Hawkins is a top 6 tight end option right now. All right, that's the Bears-Vikings game, and I do think that the Vikings win this one pretty handedly. They're 6.5-point favorites in this game. Aaron Jones in a really good spot there, game script-wise, and so is the Bears passing attack. All right, last game of the week, the Falcons versus the Raiders. Man, banger of games here on Monday Night Football. We got 2 Monday night games this week. So the Falcons, we got a Desmond Ridder revenge game here versus the Falcons. Bijan Robinson, I really think there's an argument for Bijan to be running back 1 in projections this week over Saquon with the matchups. But you're obviously not benching Bijan. Do not bench Drake London. I know Mooney did better than him last week, and Kirk Cousins is struggling, but this is a really good matchup here for Kirk Cousins and Drake London. Mooney's an interesting flex option. Ray-Ray McCloud balled last week too. Interesting sleeper to mention, but not a guy I think you need to force in your starting lineup. He had 8 catches for 98 yards last week. Please bench Kyle Pitts. I mean, what a lost season for Kyle Pitts. It's really, really bleak, man. He's been under 2.5 points in 4 of his last 5 games, and 3 of his last 3 games, he's under 2.5 points. He has not had more than 1 catch since week 10. And the targets are there. And the snap percentage has been there. He had 16% target share last week, 1 catch. All right, and the Raiders, finally, Brock Bowers is tight end 2, only behind Trey McBride. Have to start him. Myers is a good spot here versus the Falcons too. We just saw the Falcons get absolutely cooked by the Vikings passing attack. And this is no Vikings passing attack. Desmond Ridder starting. I don't have a lot of confidence in him, but it's a good matchup at least. So Myers is startable. And then Sincere McCormick, I think, is a bench this week. Alexander Madison is back. They're saying Sincere McCormick is going to be the lead back still, and I believe them when they say that. But I still think he's a bench. Madison being back is not going to help his role. He's probably going to dip back closer to 50% of the snaps, 50% of the work. And they are 5.5-point underdogs in this game. I don't think he's going to be the preferred receiving back. We finally got to see McCormick's picture in the app. So he's risen standards-wise there. But, yeah, I don't think that you want to start Sincere McCormick this week. All right, that's it. That's every single game, every single relevant player in every single game. Man, we talked through it all. Guys, if you're still tuned in from the start here, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button on the YouTube Live. We're about to get to the start sit segment. So many start sits to get through. Katie, seeing you in the TikTok Live, I got you with the running back ranks. Let me know in the TikTok Live what ranks you want to see next. I can't see your comments unless you're following, so hit the follow button. All right. We're going to get to a bunch of comments here coming up. Let's just run through the free player props quick, get to the DraftKings lineup, and then I'll give a quick weather update too, seeing some people ask about that. There is some weather. There's actually a decent bit of weather to talk through. All right, so the 3 free player props to start this out. Brian Robinson Jr., over 77.5 rushing yards, and I also like him to score a touchdown. 2 of the free player props this week are Brian Robinson Jr. I do not see how Brian Robinson Jr. fails this week. There was just a report too. The Commander's center is on the wrong side of questionable. That does have me a tiny bit nervous, but I still love the matchup here for the Commanders' rushing attack and for their offense overall. No defense is allowing more yards per carry to running backs than the Saints. We've seen so many running backs smash versus the Saints. Kyron Williams went for 104. We saw Bijan go for over 100 yards. Chuba Hubbard just fell short of this line at 70, but he scored twice. Dobbins scored. Bijan in that game, he scored twice too. We saw Javonte. We saw Bucky. We saw Sean Tucker all smash these lines. Kareem Hunt smashed these lines. Obviously, Saquon smashed them. Tyler Algier came kind of close too. So I like B-Rob coming off the bye. No Austin Eckler, of course. There is a committee backfield here. But Brian Robinson Jr., he's getting at least 15 carries in this game. They're huge favorites. I do not see how the Commanders lose versus the Saints. He's got 16 carries in his last game. He only had a 35% rush share in that game, still got 16 carries. You get 16 carries here, he's smashing these lines. 77.5 rushing yards and half a touchdown. And then the other line I like is Chuba Hubbard's reception line, over 2.5. I don't think he's coming off the field today. It's going to be very, very minimal where we don't see Chuba Hubbard on the field. He had 97% of the snaps last week. He was the only healthy running back. It's him and Mike Boone today. He had 5 targets last week, caught 4 of those. The line's here set at 2.5. I think he gets at least 3 catches in this game, has a chance at well more than 3 catches as well, especially with his game projected to be very close between the Panthers and the Cowboys. And the Cowboys have been crushed by running backs this season. I mean, absolutely obliterated by running backs. They're allowing the second most rushing touchdowns, but they're also allowing 4 catches per game, allowing 40 yards per game. So that's the 3 free player props. It's B-Rob over rushing, B-Rob over touchdown, and Chuba Hubbard over 2.5 receptions. Let's get to the DraftKings lineup. I got a sneaky DraftKings lineup here, I think, this week that is almost definitely going to be unique. And I'm going for uniqueness. I only have, my one fear with this lineup is having nobody in the Josh Allen game, which was a mistake I made last week too. So if I was going to tweak something, it might be that. But I'm going with the Justin Herbert triple stack here. I'm going Justin Herbert, Ladd, Josh Palmer, and Stone Smart. Stone Cold Smart. That's his actual middle name, by the way, Cole. Stone Cold Smart. He's minimum price. I think he's 100 over minimum priced on DraftKings. The tight end landscape this week is rough on DraftKings. You either pay up for McBride or Kelsey, which I wouldn't pay up for Kelsey. You either pay up for McBride or I think you pay down for Stone Smart. Like those are, I think, the 2 options really. So I like stacking it with Herbert for that reason. I think Mike Evans is due for a 200-yard game at some point down the stretch here to get to 1,000 receiving yards. I'm buying into that narrative. Even though this is a tougher matchup for him to do it, could definitely see it happening. And then I'm double stacking the Ravens running backs. I think combined here, Derrick Henry and Justice Hill could easily combine over 40 points. And I don't think many people are going to play both these guys, but both these guys, there's a world here where both these guys go over 20 fantasy points, especially if the game gets out of hand, which it's projected to do so. This game is a 17-point spread, and I very rarely pay up for defense in DraftKings too. Like almost never am I paying up for a defense, but it just feels like this is one of these weeks where you should pay up for the Ravens. The Ravens are going to go over 20 fantasy points and absolutely smash. First Tommy DeVito and the Giants, who have one of the lowest projected team totals in NFL history this week. All right, let's touch on the Weatherman Sam updates here quick. Then we're going to grind through starts. It's the rest of the live stream. We are just getting started, man. Just getting started. Let me make sure I have the latest reports here weather-wise, because again, there's a bunch of weather to talk through. And we're gonna have someone joining us here in about an hour We're going to have a guest on the live. Have our Titans creator joining. That should be fun. All right, let's get to the weather. So yeah, there's some games I'm not concerned about at all. The Bengals and Titans, the Cowboys and Panthers, the Steelers and Eagles, the Packers and Seahawks. There's some light rain projection. And this was the same weather report we had on Thursday night. It ended up being pretty heavy rain in the first half. But overall, I'm just not scared about rain. I've done a lot of research on this. Wind is what matters. If you've been with me through this whole season, you know wind is what matters. Wind over 25 miles an hour in particular is where you get concerned weather-wise. And none of these games have that. None of them. So don't panic about the Bengals, Titans rain, the Cowboys, Panthers rain, the Steelers, Eagles rain, the Packers, Seahawks rain. Don't panic. There's a couple games, though, I think you do want to know about weather-wise. And I think the big weather game of the day ultimately ends up being this Chiefs-Browns game. Makes me like the Chiefs defense a bit more in fantasy. Makes me more nervous for Jameis Winston. And this is ideal weather, really, for the Chiefs. The Chiefs have been incredible against the run this season and not so great against the pass. And this is going to be a tough passing game environment. 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts and scattered rain showers throughout the whole game. And this is not just scattered light rain, guys. This is scattered rain showers. And this is really tough to pinpoint based on all the weather reports I've seen. Where's my Weatherman Sam hat? I got to put the Weatherman Sam hat here in the fantasy playoffs as we talk through the weather report, because there's a lot of nuance to talk through here. But this is scattered rain showers. There's going to be moments. There's a good potential for moments in this game with downpouring rain. There's still potential for no rain in this game with how the weather report looks. But it's worth noting that there's a decent chance we see downpouring rain at times in this Chiefs-Browns game. And it's worth noting again, that's just it's not throughout the whole game. It's unlikely the whole game is downpouring rain, but there will be moments of downpouring rain. But throughout the whole game, there is going to be 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. And that's the thing I care about the most and am most concerned about. When you throw the rain on top of it, it gets even a little more concerning. And this is why I bumped Jerry Jeudy down in the ranks during this live stream. There's some guys I would start over Jerry Jeudy because of this. I would start. If you're watching live on TikTok, you're seeing the old rankings. Come to the YouTube live. Link is in the TikTok bio to see the new rankings. I'll pull up the wide receiver ranks here. I've had them up on the YouTube live for a little while here. But yeah, I would start Ladd McConkey over Jerry Jeudy. I'd start Jalen Waddle over Jerry Jeudy. I'd start CeeDee Lamb over Jerry Jeudy. I'd start T. Higgins over Jerry Jeudy. And I'd start Garrett Wilson over Jeudy too. And I would consider Keenan as well. And man, Judy's been balling. Judy's been a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL over the last month. I mean, with that one game, obviously revenge game versus the Broncos, the greatest revenge game of all time, literally, had 40 points and had 235 yards and a touchdown. And this isn't a horrible matchup for him versus the Chiefs. We got him projected for 75 yards in the Walter Picks app, but he does deserve to be bumped down the ranks with the 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts and potential downpouring rain. The role, though, might actually be really strong for Jeudy. There's no Cedric Tillman again this week. And David Njoku is a game-time decision. And this makes me even more concerned about Njoku. I really think if you have Njoku, you can't start him. Even if he plays, it's a good matchup for Njoku, too. The Chiefs have been the second best matchup for tight ends. It's just the injury, the re-injury risk, it's a hamstring injury. And it seemed all week like he had no chance to play. Now they're saying he's testing out game time. This game is a 1 o'clock game. Yeah, it's a 1 o'clock game. So we should know in the next really 30 minutes, we'll know if Njoku's in or out. But even if Njoku ends up being in, I'm going to be very hesitant to start him. Bless you. Thank you. I think you got to be benching Njoku with the weather report, with the injury stuff. You got to find a guy that's healthy in a game without 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts and potential downpouring rain. I really like the Chiefs, by the way, at -4.5 with this weather report, too. It makes me like Pacheco a little bit more. I still don't want to start the Browns running backs in this matchup. All right, and then the other game, Colts and Broncos. I didn't mention this when I talked about this game, but this game has a very similar weather report, minus the potential scattered rain showers, and also the wind is supposed to be more concentrated in the first half for the Colts and Broncos. So half of a concerning report here for the Colts Broncos. The second half it's supposed to die down. It's not supposed to die down in this Chiefs Browns game. 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts throughout the whole game. All right, that's the Weatherman Sam report for you guys here in Week 15. Again, this is a good tiebreaker for guys in these games, pass catchers in these games in particular. McConkey in. Yeah, McConkey's going to play. I just read that report from Hollywood Brown can make his Chiefs debut next week. Wow, that's exciting. Just reading that report about McConkey, they are optimistic he plays. I mean, if they're optimistic he plays, I think all of us should be optimistic he plays. This was an hour ago from Ian Rappaport. I put it at like 95% that McConkey plays at this point. I'm willing to just put him in the starting lineup and have faith that he's going to play. Player props, Aiden. Yeah, we went through the 3 free player props. We've been absolutely smashing the 3 free player props this season. Bad weather for Detroit. No. That's one of those games that I am not scared. That's a dome game. It's a dome game, yeah, in Detroit. The Lions don't play in bad weather. All right, let's get to the start-sit comments now, guys. This is the moment where we are going to start grinding through the start-sits. Morning, Sam. Really trying to figure out a way to get Thielen in my lineup. Not that crazy, no. Amari, Zay, Pacheco, Thielen. Yeah, I saw a comment in TikTok earlier about Zay versus Thielen, and these guys are really, really close. And this might be the spot to get him in. I think it's close between Pacheco, too. I don't really want to bench Amari. Let's swap him out with Amari here quick. The ceiling is so high for Amari Cooper. Yeah, Thielen projects a bit better than Amari, though. And Keon Coleman is back. I think it's one of these two guys, Ben, that you put Thielen in for. It's either Flowers or Amari. Not a great matchup here for Flowers. Probably not a great game script either. He hasn't had a big game in over a month. Yeah, I think I would bench Flowers and play Thielen and Amari. I do think, like, look at this ceiling for Amari, man. Unreal ceiling for Amari Cooper in this game, and I definitely agree with that. Jonnu or Andrews. Yeah, let's hop over to the tight end rank. Seeing some people ask for that in the TikTok live. Again, if you're on the TikTok live, you got to be following for me to see the comments. So hit the follow button and let me know what ranks you guys want to see next. I would go Jonnu over Andrews. Yeah. Hey, Sam. Happy first week of the playoffs, man. You two, 1 week at a time from here on out. Herbert or Kyler? Yeah, I'm going Herbert. I'm going Herbert over Kyler. Great matchup for Herbert this week versus the Bucs. Lad's likely going to play. 2, not a bad spot for Kyler either, but yeah, I'm going Herbert there. Ertz or Laporta? Yeah, it's Ertz. I think it's Ertz over Laporta. And this is a tough one, man. I mean, if you were to tell me back in week 1 that we'd be starting the fantasy playoffs and I'd be arguing to start Zach Ertz over Laporta, I mean, I definitely would not have believed you, like, at all. And here we are. It's week 15, and Laporta and Zach Ertz have the same projection. Laporta actually looks like a slightly better option here from the Walter Pixat projections, and he is coming off a 54-yard game. That was the second most of the season. He's playing over 90% of the snaps now. 3 straight games over 17% target share. All of that bodes well for Sam Laporta. Zach Ertz, though, he's been consistent too. He's over 12 points in 3 straight. There's no Noah Brown this week, which I think is a very low-key but big deal for the Commanders' passing attack. His target share has been even more consistent than Laporta. But then you look at these 2 games, man. You look at these games, and both these teams have been, both these defenses have been okay versus tight ends, but this Bills-Lions game, you do want pieces of it. So, yeah, I actually think I would go Laporta over Zach Ertz. They both project so close. I think I would lean Laporta over Ertz. Kincaid or Henry? Yeah, I'm going Henry over Kincaid. Kincaid or Kraft? I'm going Kraft over Kincaid as well. Lad versus Charbonnet. You can't bench Sharp. There's absolutely no benching Sharp. Walter Pick says Brian Thomas over Hall and Pollard PPR. And Vikings versus Falcons versus Washington. Yeah, so I do really like Washington versus Jake Haener. I don't hate the Falcons in the Desmond Ridder revenge game either, and I don't hate the Vikings either. I'd go Commanders up personally. Commanders versus Jake Haener feels like a great move to me. And then, yeah, Brian Thomas Jr., I think I would play him over Brees. I think I would play him over Pollard too. And let's talk about Brian Thomas Jr. here for a sec, because the Brees and Pollard, I mean, they're also like pretty similar spots. Good matchups, both dealing with injuries, which is definitely a risk. And Brian Thomas Jr., I mean, he had a 40% target share last week. We're projecting for a 31% target share. I think that's actually a pretty conservative projection. They're making it a clear focus to get him the ball. The Jets defense is not scary at this point. Both Tyreek and Waddle went over 20. Last game, I think Brian Thomas Jr. has got a similar floor to these guys. Man, Brees, though, this is close between him and Brees. It's a tough call to bench Brees Hall in the first week of the fantasy football playoffs. Your first round pick. We know what the ceiling is for Brees. The matchup is unreal for Breece Hall against the Jags. I mean, let's just look at the matchup tab here against the Jags before we make a final call here between Brian Thomas Jr. and Breece Hall. And we go back to the wide receiver ranks here as well. So the Jags, Tony Pollard last week in a game where the Titans did not score a touchdown, still had 14 points. Joe Mixon at 22. He was a top 5 running back. Gibbs and Montgomery both went over 19. That game was an absolute smashing by the Lions. Aaron Jones had 12 points, didn't score. Saquon had 33. Jacobs had 25. Swift and Sermon both went over 18. Jermichael Hasty went over 15. I mean, we haven't seen very many bad games versus the Jaguars, even in games where these running backs aren't scoring. But then you think about the situation for Breece, and he's dealing with a knee injury. The team has no incentive to really push him to his max. They have 2 good young running backs that both, in theory, are going to mix in and could easily steal the touchdowns from Breece. So, yeah, I think I'd still lean Brian Thomas Jr. It's a tough call with Breece, but he's a volatile option this week that I think is a ceiling play. I would say Brian Thomas Jr. is safer, but Breece has the higher ceiling. You got to make a decision with that as you will. All those Breece Hall decisions out there today, they're floor ceiling decisions. And if you choose Breece, you're going for the ceiling, not the floor. Joey, how we doing, man? Made playoffs again this year after 3 years watching the live and being a subscriber. Joey, appreciate you. Man, can't believe we're 15 weeks in. Now we got to grind it out one at a time. Appreciate you as well. Levis or Richardson, Douglas or Mooney. Yes, the first one here I think is pretty easy. You know, after watching Will Levis not score a touchdown versus the Jaguars, now he's in another good spot here versus the Bengals, but man, you got to go A-Rich. A-Rich is averaging 10 carries, right around 10 carries per game in his last 3 games. Like, these are not comparable fantasy football options, I don't think. I got them in different tiers, 2 tiers apart over on the TikTok live. By the way, guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live. Link is right in the TikTok bio. I can share screen. We're looking at a Will Levis, Anthony Richardson comparison on the YouTube live right now to answer this comment. I can pull comments up on screen too. Again, just it's a better viewing experience in the YouTube live. But yeah, I'm going A-Rich for sure here. And the matchup scarier. Pat Surtain versus Anthony Richardson is not a matchup I feel great about. But the rushing is there. And Levis, he had 7 points versus the Jags. This offensive line is in complete shambles. So yeah, I'm going A-Rich. And then this other question I think is much closer. The other part of this question, Douglas versus Mooney. This is actually an interesting one. I do think Demario Douglas is a good sleeper this week, but it's still got to be Mooney. Yeah, you still got to go Mooney. Mooney's coming off a great game. We had him in the DraftKings lineup last week. That definitely paid off well. 20 points, 6 catches, 142. He's not coming off the field. I mean, I like Douglas as a sleeper this week because the Cardinals have struggled against the slot, because he's been pretty consistent out of the slot for Drake May. He just doesn't have the ceiling that Mooney has, and I feel like the floors are actually pretty comparable here too. So yeah, I'm going Mooney over Douglas, but I think it is a good question, a good one to think about for sure. Caleb over Kyler. Yep, I would go Caleb over Kyler. Tua or Kyler? I'm going Tua. Ertz or McLeod? Oh gosh, I think I'd go Ertz over McLeod. It's gross though. I hate starting 2 tight ends. Breece versus Bucky. Yeah, I'm going Breece over Bucky. They're in very similar situations, but Breece's matchup is much better. Much better. Good morning, Sam. Gross start sit. Been having running back issues all year. There are some really, really gross start sits today. I'm not going to lie. And this is definitely one of them. Madison, Benson, Algier, or Braylon Allen. Yeah, so to me, it's one of these middle 2. You can't start Braylon Allen. Isaiah Davis has been better than Braylon Allen. Now Breece is back. There's no starting Braylon Allen this week. And then you got Alexander Madison. Hop over to the running back ranks here. I don't think any of these guys. Yeah, Trey Benson, he finds himself in the top 46. So does Tyler Algier. I think it's Algier here. And I actually think Benson's an interesting sleeper. Let's do this comparison quick. Because Amari DiMercado is out. So the 2 low-key but significant injuries this week, Noah Brown is not playing. He's averaging around an 18% target share for the Commanders. And Amari DiMercado, who had 4 catches last week and is continually sort of annoyingly eaten into the running back room for the Cardinals, he's out too. But I still think it's probably Tyler Algier in a matchup versus the Raiders. He's going to get a chance at probably close to 10 carries. He's been right around like the 6-7 carry range. He scored in his last game versus the Vikings. Yeah, he had 9 carries, 8 carries, 11 carries in his last few games. Like, he's going to get close to 10 carries against the Raiders. Got a good chance at a touchdown there. I think Trey Benson gets some run too versus the Pats. Good matchup for him as well. He did have a couple good games back in week 9, week 10. But yeah, I think it's Algier. It's definitely close between those two guys. Wide receiver, yeah, I got you with the wide receiver ranks. Sam, let's go. Yeah, let's go, man. It's week 15. It's the fantasy football playoffs. I'm locked in, man. Made playoffs last few years, so thank you. Appreciate you as well. Need help. And by the way, shout everyone that made the playoffs. Good job. But this is not the time to celebrate. Good job. But like the championship is all that matters. Nobody will remember if you made the playoffs. Like ultimately, you lose this week or you lose next week, and it's the same as not making the playoffs from my perspective. So happy to hear you made it because that's the first big step. But now it's time to lock in, man. We got to try to make the right start sits. And the first one here, Matt, I'm the same way. I've definitely tinkered with my starting lineups more this week than every other week. And you got to remember, you got to not overthink some of the spots this week. And this is, I think, a great example of that. Breece Hall versus McCormick. Like, you got to go with Breece Hall here. Breece Hall is playing. And Madison is back, too. I think McCormick is like a clear bench. Not a great matchup for him versus the Falcons. Breece Hall comes with risk, but he has a ceiling here versus the Jags. He has a decent chance at a touchdown. He's going to have some type of receiving role. And the fact that he's playing, I would be shocked if he didn't play like at least around half the snaps and get at least half the work in this backfield. And that is a pretty good spot to be versus the Jags. There's some re-injury risk, just like there was with Garendo on Thursday night, just like there is with Tony Pollard in the Titans game with the ankle injury. But yeah, I'm going Breece over McCormick like easily, and I'm not benching Breece Hall in the fantasy football playoffs for Sincere McCormick. I'm not doing that. Laporta or Andrews full PPR, that one's close too. I think I'd go Andrews there. Shout out to you, Matt. Appreciate you for tuning into the lives all season. Shout out to everybody in this live stream right now, guys. We are still just getting started. We are really going to go probably right up to 1 o'clock today. We got a guest joining us in like 30 minutes too to bounce some ideas off of. And get some insight from as well. Our Titans creator, Bryce, will be joining us in about 30 minutes. Longtime Walter Pick app user here. Good pre-noon, Sam. Good pre-noon to you, Sue Hall as well. PPR, choose one. One running back, one flex. Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis, Braylon Allen, Sharp, Sincere, or DK. Yes, so you're starting Sharp. You have to start Sharp. And then Breece Hall versus DK. I don't love starting Sharp and DK Metcalf, but I feel like DK Metcalf probably projects better then Breece Hall, yeah, he does. Yeah, this is a very interesting spot here because both these guys are really like ceiling plays, both Breece and DK Metcalf. The bust probability a bit better for DK. Yeah, I think you just go Sharp and DK. Just avoid the whole Jets backfield because you can. I'm cool with that. I think that's fine. And it should be a high-scoring game versus the Packers. And Kenneth Walker's not going to play. No, he's not playing. He's out. He's doubtful. He's out. Doubtful means out in today's NFL. I'd be shocked if he played. Tim Murphy, hey Sam, goated stream as always. Thanks, man. Walter Picks is the reason I'm in the playoffs. Let's go. But job's not finished. Hell yeah, Tim. The job is not finished. Job finished? Job not finished. Start 3 full PPR. Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Drake, London, AJ Brown, McConkey. So some really good options here. This is not an easy start sit decision here. Sometimes the hardest start sits are the ones where you have all good options. Those are sometimes the really tough ones because some of these guys are going to smash. And you don't want to leave the guys that smash on the bench. So A.J. Brown, it needs to be started. I think he has to be started amongst all of these guys. I'm starting A.J. Brown over Devontae Adams. I'm starting him over T. Higgins. I'm starting him over Drake London. And I'm starting him over Ladd McConkey too. I'm in on the squeaky wheel narrative here with A.J. Brown. To be fair, I was in on it with Deebo Samuel Thursday night. You guys all saw how that turned out. But this is a different type of player than Deebo Samuel. A.J. Brown has a strong floor. Like he's going to get at least 10 points. A.J. Brown, despite only averaging 4.8 catches per game, he's 5th in yards per game. The only receivers with more yards per game than A.J. Brown, despite how disappointing it's been for A.J. Brown recently, are like the 4 best receivers in the NFL right now. It's Nico, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Puka. That's it. Those are the only guys with more yards per game than A.J. Brown this season. So no, I'm not benching A.J. Brown. It's not a great matchup versus the Steelers. I don't really care matchup-wise for A.J. Brown. I still think he's the type of guy you just need to be starting. So this is a start 2. We're going to start 2 out of Adams, T. Higgins, and McConkey and London. Man, and I think McConkey's got to be benched. Adams, T. Higgins, and London all project better than him. I think I would go I think I would go McConkey over T. Higgins, though. Did I change that already on the YouTube live? I might have. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, wow, this is insanely close. I think you go Adams and McConkey, bench London. Go Adams, McConkey, bench London. And I do like Adams a lot right now for the reasons I was explaining when I talked to the Jets game. Like that, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, they're like auditioning for their next team right now. Adams is going to get peppered with targets because of that. It's a good matchup, obviously, for Adams, too. He's got a good touchdown upside. And I don't want to bench McConkey. Again, I think McConkey's going to play. And if he plays, like you kind of have to start him. He had a 50% target share last week, and he gets an amazing matchup. Charbonnet or Chuba Hubbard, yeah, that's an interesting one. I want to start both those guys like bad. It's Sharp over Chuba. It's super close, actually. They're 0.2 apart. They're both the top of tier 2, only behind Achane. You can't go wrong with either guy, but it's tough to bench Sharp after last week with Kenneth out. Calvin Ridley or Marvin Harrison Jr. in PPR. An interesting one. Definitely not an easy call here either. Really similar options, honestly. Yeah, they're back-to-back in the ranks in the Walter Picks app. I'd go Marv. I'd go Marv over Ridley. What's up, Sam? Had a gut feeling I should bench Cup, but I didn't. Xavier, that's rough, man. Now who's got the bigger PPR ceiling? Dowdle or yes, Dowdle. It's Dowdle over London. Yeah, Dowdle really, you can't bench Dowdle. He gets the Panthers throwing the most points per game to running backs. Dowdle is now in one of the best roles in the NFL. Playing my roommate in the playoffs, man, that doesn't get more fun than that. Half PPR pick 2. Pollard, Breece, Addison, and Shakir. Oh, man. I mean, you have a chance here to just sidestep the risk with Pollard and Breece and just go with Addison and Shakir. I don't think that's the worst option. And I would go Breece over Pollard. So let's compare these guys. This is half PPR too, though. That does change things a bit. Half PPR definitely, it pushes you towards the running backs more. Almost always. Yeah, I would just bench Breece. Like in spots like this, just bench Breece, bench Pollard. You can sidestep the whole injury risk here, and you still have good options. Even though it's a half PPR league, I'm okay with that. Shakir and Addison, both really good options. Amari Cooper or Stevenson, yeah, it's a floor ceiling decision there. I think I'd lean towards Stevenson over Amari for the floor. But Amari Cooper has an extremely high ceiling this week. One of the highest ceilings among all players. You know, if you start a Cooper Kupp or something on Thursday night, or, you know, for whatever reason, you're projected to get crushed, like Amari Cooper could turn that around. Amari Cooper has like a 40-plus point ceiling versus the line. That's the type of ceiling we're talking about. Good morning, Sam. Love the content you put out week to week. Thank you. Random name. Guys, shout out to everybody in this live stream right now. We're 15 Sunday lives in, and there's so much to get through today, so I'll keep going. I love using the Walter Picks app every week. Yeah, guys, if you have not checked out the Walter Picks app yet, I do not know what you are waiting for. Like at this point of the season, you are actively not trying to win your fantasy league if you don't have the Walter Picks app, and it's going to help you with player props and game betting and becoming a better sports bettor too, all year round, not even just for the NFL. The link to it is in the YouTube description, in the TikTok bio. You can use code SAM. When you sign up, you'll get a free 7-day trial too. All right, keep up the great work. Thanks, man. Tough question here. Otton, Ertz, or Pittman? Oh, man. I hate these tight end flex decisions here. Ertz is behind Otton. Pittman with Josh Downs back is definitely with him probably against Surtain too. Otton actually has the best ceiling. Oh, God. Let's look at the matchup here if I scroll down a bit. Yeah, this is not an easy one. I think you do have to go Pittman, though. It's a scary one, but I think you go Pittman. Pittman's probably that ceiling play, and I would probably call the floor play if you want to play it safe, depending on the matchup, too, you're in. Sam, I am in need of some help. Flowers, Mooney, Waymo, Jamo, Swift. We're not playing Swift. You got to bench Swift. He might not play. I think he probably plays, but he might not play. And he's dealing with an injury, and last week he played a ton and only 4 points. It was a tough matchup for him, too, versus the Vikings. A pass funnel defense, really good against the run. So let's do this one. Jameson Williams, Flowers, and Mooney. I think it's going to be Flowers and Mooney. Mooney and Jamo are close, man. Yeah. I do want pieces of this Lions-Bills game. I'm definitely scared for the Ravens passing attack, too. Who has the highest ceiling? Judy or Wilson? Yeah, you got to go Garrett Wilson over Judy. I think Garrett Wilson has a higher ceiling. With the weather report in that Chiefs game, I think Garrett Wilson's higher ceiling. Yeah, I'm nervous for the Ravens passing attack a bit because this game really might not be close. Like, it really might not be close at all. And Flowers has not had a huge game in like a month. But Jameson Williams is not a better option than Zay Flowers. So yeah, I think you bench JMO. Sam, first time in the live, made playoffs and need to lock in. Let's go. Jerry, Malik, or DJ, and James Cook or Breece Hall. Appreciate you. PPR league. Yes, I'm going James Cook over Breece this week. Even though James Cook's got a tougher matchup, even though James Cook's coming off a tough game, I still think the floor ceiling combo is better for James Cook, just less risk injury-wise for Breece. The real risk, there's two risks for Breece in this game. The matchup's amazing, and Breece Hall is obviously very talented and has a ceiling when he's getting the ball. But the risk is he has a re-injury with that knee, and there's no incentive for them to really be risking this with Breece. You know, they at this point, they're out of the playoffs, and they have two good young running backs too. And that's the other risk, is that, you know, they are aware of the re-injury risk, and so they don't play Breece as much as he normally plays, and it's like a three-way committee type of thing. And he's only got like a 1 out of 3 chance to be the one that scores the touchdowns. Very possible. So yeah, for those reasons, I think it's going James Cook's fine. Let's hop over to the running back scene. People ask for that in the TikTok live. Guys, you're watching live on TikTok, hit the follow button so I can see your comments, and then let me know what position rankings you want to see next. I'll pull up the running back ranks here on the YouTube live too. We're also live on YouTube. Link to that is in the TikTok bio as well if you want a better live stream viewing experience. All right, and then Jerry, Malik, or DJ. Yes, it's DJ here. I think you got to go DJ Moore. I really do not want to bench DJ Moore this week at all. We just saw a couple weeks ago DJ Moore play this Vikings defense, a Vikings defense that is, I think, probably the biggest pass funnel in the NFL. And Jerry Jeudy projects well too, but there's some concerning weather in that game, 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts and scattered rain showers in that game. See, I'm going DJ Moore. DJ Moore, the last time he played the Vikings, 7 catches, 106 yards, touchdown, was the wide receiver for that week, had 27 points. And the floor for DJ Moore is strong too. He's not coming off the field. He's seeing consistent targets. Really, the floor for all three of those Bears receivers and ceiling is really good versus the Vikings. So I'm playing DJ Moore there. Flowers or Ertz? Yeah, I'm going Flowers. Ferguson or Njoku? I think you got to bench Njoku. I really do. And we're about to find out here probably in about 10 minutes when the actives and inactives come out for the early games, if Njoku's even in. And I won't be shocked at all if he's out. Like, I'd probably say 60-40 chance he doesn't play. So a good chance he plays, but if he plays, he's not at 100%. Amari or Zay? Yeah, so Zay projects much better than Amari Cooper. Should you bench Nix for Sharp? Oh, God. Probably not. Bo Nix is a top 10 QB. Sharp is a top 10 running back. Oh, wow. Oh, my God. Look at this YouTube live. Can you really not start Sharp at running back? I mean, I guess it's Sharp over Bo Nix. Man, I don't know if I do it. I don't know if I do it. I don't want to start a non-quarterback in the Superflex like ever. You got to be able to find Sharp at another spot. But Walter Picks app is saying you should. Good morning, Sam. Been here since week 1. Appreciate all the help. Thanks, Cam. Appreciate you too, man. Tough start sit. Pick 2. Breece, Bucky, Adunze. Yeah, this is a tough start sit. There are some very tough start sits with Breece Hall involved in them this weekend. Bucky Irving's tough too, man. And I think I would go Breece over Bucky. I am more nervous about Bucky than I am Breece because the matchup's also not great for Bucky Irving. It is a great matchup for Breece. They're in really similar situations, though. So, yeah, I think I'd go Breece and Adunze here and bench Bucky Irving if I could. I'm okay sidestepping the risk here if I can. QB ranks. Yeah, I got you the QB ranks. Sam, thanks for getting me to the playoffs. Anderson, I'm just here trying to pass along the best possible information I can. Anderson, you made it to the playoffs. Don't give me the credit. I don't want the credit. I'm here to try to help you make the playoffs, but it's not me. It's you. Like, you got to, at the end of the day, you guys got to make these calls. And a lot of times too, when I'm trying to help you guys out, I'll tell you what I would do, but I also tell you, like, do you want to try to lock in the floor and play it safe or go for the ceiling? And like, ultimately, a lot of that decision-making comes down to you guys. How much do you guys want to consider the weather? How much do you guys want to consider the floor and ceiling? So, Anderson, give yourself some credit too. But again, this is not the time to celebrate too soon. It's not about the playoffs. It's about the championships. Start 2, Jeudy, Moore, Mooney, Pollard. Job not done. Jeudy, Moore, Mooney, Pollard. Yeah, so it's the first 2 here. You're definitely playing DJ Moore. And in a lot of questions today, if you can sidestep it, you should with Pollard and with Breece, with other good options. And yeah, even with the weather, I'm going Jeudy over Darnell Mooney. with no Cedric Tillman and potentially no Njoku too. Again, we're going to hear about that soon. Jake, man, how we doing? Adam Thielen or Breece Hall this week? I hope you're doing well, Jake, former Browns creator there. Adam Thielen versus Breece Hall. That's a very intriguing one. And probably another one where it does probably make sense just to sidestep all the risk with Breece and just, go with Adam Thielen. Go with Adam Thielen. I was a little bit concerned earlier in the week about Thielen with Jalen Coker returning. I talked about two of the big low-key injuries this week that I actually don't think are small, with Noah Brown and Amari DiMercado potentially having a big boost to the other guys on their teams with them out. I thought there was maybe going to be a similar thing with Jalen Coker back, but I've since gotten over that. Like, I don't think Jalen Coker moves Thielen out of the slot. That's the big thing. Coker was in the slot before Thielen was back. Thielen's been in the slot, and he's been balling in the slot. I think ultimately they got to keep Thielen in the slot, and that's what they'll do. So, I'd find going Thielen over Breece Hall. And even if they move Thielen out of the slot, it's not like that's a death sentence for him. Is A.J. Brown worth a sit consideration this week? Bad weather and Pittsburgh defense. I have Ridley and Waddle and need to start 2.5 PPR. Yeah, so you're benching Ridley here. You're playing A.J. Brown. Do not play Calvin Ridley over A.J. Brown. I don't care about some light rain in this game either. Like the weather, you got to parse through the weather, guys. And some weather matters way, way, way more than other. There's really two games with actually concerning weather today. Weatherman Sam's here for you guys. I'm on it. I've been on it all season. We've had a couple misses with the weather. I'm going to eat the L's as the L's happen. But there's two games that I think you should be actually concerned about weather-wise, and you should use this information to make some tough calls with your start sits. The Chiefs-Browns game is going to be the worst weather game likely of the week. 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts in this game. The wind is really important when it comes to the weather. By far the most important thing. It is very, very hard to throw in the wind. This is not sustained winds over 30, but wind gusts. There's also probably going to be the heaviest rain of all the games in this Chiefs-Browns game too. So it's the worst wind game and the worst rain game combined into one. So that makes me a bit nervous for Judy. Definitely nervous for Winston. I still don't want to start the Browns running backs. It does make me a little bit more nervous about Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce, and Hawkins too. It makes me like Pacheco even a bit more, and definitely makes me like the Chiefs defense more. Honestly, it makes me think the Chiefs even more likely to win the game too. And then the Colts-Broncos game, same type of weather report with less of the rain, and also only the first half is expected to have 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts. The second half is supposed to die down a bit. But that's the only other game. The other games with weather reports, and I promise you on these broadcasts for these games, they're going to be talking about the weather because it's going to be raining. But guys, there's going to be scattered light rain. There could be some moments of heavy rain, but there's not wind in these games. The Bengals-Titans, the Cowboys-Panthers, the Steelers-Eagles, the Packers-Seahawks. There's not going to be significant wind in these games. There's just going to be some rain. I'm really not concerned about them. I don't think you should start Ridley over A.J. Brown, for example, because of that. And in the Calvin Ridley game has a similar weather report as the A.J. Brown game. Love the Walter Picks app. Thanks, Brad. Yeah, if you guys haven't checked out the Walter Picks app yet, I seriously do not know what you're waiting for. Start 3 in a standard league here. Hull, Pacheco, Mooney, Thielen. Yeah, you're benching Mooney here. Standard league, you got to go with the running backs. You got to take the risk with Breece. In standard leagues, like Mooney is really not close, I don't think, to these running backs. Thielen honestly isn't either. So yeah, that's how I would do it. Darnold or Herbert. Yeah, I'm going Herb this week over Darnold for sure. Garrett Wilson, Bucky, or DK in the flex. Yeah, it's got to be Garrett Wilson versus the Jags. Adams, Judy, or Neighbors. Adams, Judy, or Neighbors. Yeah, it's got to be Adams. Adams auditioning for his next team alongside Aaron Rodgers here in a good spot. Why sit Josh Downs? Also Schultz or Noah Gray. Yeah, so there's just a lot of risk with Downs. I think I don't. It depends who you're starting him over. There's two sides to every start sit. There's always two sides to every single start sit. So it depends who you're starting Josh Downs over or not. But Josh Downs has been the wide receiver 1 for the Colts this season when he's played. I won't be shocked if he's the wide receiver 1 this week. Pittman's been stepping up a bit, though. We got Pittman just ahead of Josh Downs. I don't think there's a true ceiling for Downs this week. First round bye, 2 years in a row, thanks to the Walter Picks Premium sub. Just stopping through to smash the like button and say thanks. Let's go. Good luck, everyone. Let's go, Alvin. Yeah, I got the bye in 2 of my high-stakes leagues, too. It feels very good, especially as you watch from the sidelines. Obviously, I'm in a couple other leagues that I didn't get the bye. Also, some leagues of mine don't have a bye at all. But, man, it feels like a very good week to sidestep with the bye, with some of the really, really tough start sits out there, some of the injury stuff going on. And I think in just a few minutes, we should be getting some of these actives inactives here in a second with Njoku and a couple other guys we're waiting on. I'm in a pickle, Sam, going against Josh Allen. Yeah, that's tough. Not a good spot to be in. I'm in that spot in one of my leagues as well. Starting Shakir. Do I can play Kincaid, Noah Fant, or Smart? And flex Pollard or Dowdle? So the flex here, Jared, it's Dowdle. Dowdle over Pollard like by a mile. Like actually not even that close. Dowdle's dealing with an ankle injury, but Pollard's dealing with an ankle injury, but Dowdle's also just in an incredible role. Definitely a better role than Pollard and a better matchup than Pollard. So definitely Dowdle here. The tight end question, I get why you're mentioning Josh Allen here. And I think it's not a reason to play Kincaid. It's a reason to play the guy with the highest ceiling, I think. Not necessarily try to play defense, but try to play offense. If you're playing against Josh Allen, like I think it's okay to take some bigger risks. But yeah, you go Kincaid here. I think it's Kincaid over Fant, over Stone Cold Smart, who has maybe the best name in the NFL, if we're being honest. And unless you play in a point per best name league, I think you got to go Kincaid over Stone Cold Smart. Though I do have Stone Cold Smart in the DraftKings lineup this week, but that's just because he's minimum priced over on DraftKings. Hey, Keenan or Bucky, Irving or Kyler or Herbert? Yeah, so it's Herb over Kyler and it's Keenan over Bucky. If you can, you should bench Bucky and Brees and Pollard. If you have a good option, I think that's a pretty good strategy. Like you don't need to take on the risk if you have other good options. You should take on the risk if you have bad options. If you have like DeAndre Swift or Tyrone Tracy or Jalen Warren or Javonte Williams or Sincere McCormick, like no thanks. I'll take the risk with Brees. I'll take the risk with Bucky. I'll take the risk with Pollard. But if I have Keenan Allen, just play Keenan Allen. He gets the Vikings, the biggest pass funnel defense in the league. He's not coming off the field. He's got a good touchdown upside. And then Herbert, man, versus the Bucs. I do not want to bench Herbert at all. Alex, how we doing, man? Start 3, Ladd, AJ Brown, DJ, and JSN. Oh, man, yeah, this is not an easy one either. Again, some of the toughest start hits are with some of the best players, and I think it's JSN here. I think you bench JSN. You play Ladd, you play AJ, you play DJ. Happy first round of the playoffs. Walter Pick sub for the 3rd year. Ethan, shout out to you, man. Again, if you are a Walter Pick subscriber, if you guys aren't Walter Pick subscribers, you shouldn't be surprised to see all these comments from the Walter Pick subscribers who are all in the playoffs. This year, over 70% of Walter Pick subscribers that synced a league made the playoffs. It's not too late to subscribe. The season's not over. And you can get an annual subscription too at a discount, which will carry through all the way through next fantasy season. Use code SAM if you sign up. The link is in the TikTok bio and YouTube description to find the app. Neighbors, Pollard, or Pacheco? Yeah, I think you kind of have to play Neighbors here. Let's do this comparison, though. I assume this is a PPR league. I think you bench Pollard. Yeah, bench Pollard. Play Pacheco. The weather report honestly makes me like Pacheco more, the wind and the rain for the Chiefs versus the Browns. Waddle or Myers, you're not benching Waddle today. Absolutely not benching Waddle. The Texans have been torched by slot receivers. Waddle's been pretty hot of late, too. Sam, big thanks. I got the W last week to make the playoffs. Appreciate you. Standard. I have Burrow, Chase Stack, and London Kittle already played. Need 2 running backs, 1 flex. Pacheco, Mondre, Bucky, Tracy, and Jameson. Yeah, it's these first 2 guys. You got to start these first 2 guys. Then it's between Bucky, Tracy, and Jameson. So I would go Bucky over Tracy. Bucky versus Jameson Williams is a really interesting one. We obviously know the ceiling that Bucky Irving has. We know he's dealing with an injury that caused him to barely play last week. But in a spot like this, I'm okay going Bucky Irving in a spot like this. I am. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, hit the follow button. I cannot see your comments unless you're following. And then let me know what rankings you want to see next. Tight end rankings I'm seeing. So I'll pull that up. I do think Bucky's going to play today. But how much is he going to play? Battling through a back and hip injury with other good running backs on the team. Similar thing with Brees. Man, similar thing. So yeah, I think you start the 3 running backs here. Devontae Smith, Coleman, Roma Dunze, non-PPR. Oh man, yeah, non-PPR call. That makes it even grosser. Let's do this real quick here. I don't think PPR, non-PPR, half PPR like changes this one much. I think all these guys are pretty close. And I do think Keon Coleman's like a very intriguing sleeper this week. He comes with a lot of risk just because he hasn't played in a while, though. So I'm okay benching him for these 2 guys. Dunze coming off a 2-touchdown game. Devontae Smith in a tough matchup. And I like AJ Brown a lot this week. But yeah, I think it's Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith versus Brees. I'm seeing someone ask that in the YouTube live. I've seen a bunch more Brees questions too. in the TikTok live. This is also an interesting one. I think you go Brees over Devontae Smith. Calcaterra or Smart. These are the start sits I get up for in the morning, man. This is it. This is what fantasy leagues often come down to. And I think I finally found when I can tell someone to start Stone Cold Smart. Yeah, we're starting Stone Cold Smart here. Again, his middle name is Cole. That is a real thing. His full name is Stone Cold Smart. And he gets the Bucs today as the starting tight end for the Chargers. Yo, do I intentionally lose to get a better matchup for playoffs next week? This is actually a really intriguing question that I don't think you should. I don't think you should. And do you really know that it's a better matchup? That's the thing that I think about with stuff like this. Someone was just asking me something like this last week. Like, you don't ever really know what the better matchup is. And you don't want to mess with the fantasy gods like this. Like, it never works out when you mess with fantasy gods and try to do things to get the right matchup. You bench guys to get the right match. Like, I just wouldn't do it. I wouldn't mess with it. Play your best team. Let the chips fall where they may. Sam, thank you for helping this season. And Njoku, Smart, Henry, or Muth. Yeah, I think you go Hunter Henry here. I think you go Hunter Henry over Njoku. If Njoku's active, which I think we're about to find out, Brees Hall officially active this week. David Njoku is inactive. David Njoku officially inactive, which is what I expected. So Njoku is out, guys. Njoku's out. Yeah, Njoku inactive. That's big news. I'm surprised that he was even a game time decision. Hamstring injuries, you just can't play through those. Rough for Njoku, rough for Evan Ingram. Suddenly, like, the tight end landscape is bleak, man. It's bleak. And yeah, so Hunter Henry is a good option. He's the top of tier 3 for me this week. Who are we starting, McCormick or Gus? Yeah, Adrian, this is gross, man. Absolutely gross. And I don't want to start McCormick. I think I got both these guys on the must bench list. I didn't put Gus on the must bench list, but he could definitely have been on there. Man, it's McCormick, I think, over Gus. The better matchup is for Gus. The problem for Gus Edwards is he's not the best running back on his own team. I think the coaching staff still trusts him more, but he literally played less snaps last game. He scored versus the Chiefs, which is impressive, versus the Chiefs, but he played less snaps, 43%. Vidal was over 50%. In the second half, it really skewed towards Vidal. Vidal is definitely a better receiving back. Gus Edwards has absolutely no receiving upside. He never has. So he needs to get a touchdown. He's got a chance at a touchdown. He's probably the preferred goal line back. But Sincere McCormick's almost definitely going to touch the ball more than Gus. It sounds like McCormick's like locked into still being the starter, even though Madison is back. I don't feel good about McCormick, but I think I feel better about him than Gus. Yeah, I think I'd go McCormick over Gus. Kelsey or Hunter Henry? I'm going Kelsey over Hunter. I'm going Kelsey for sure. Bucky or Myers, half PPR. Man, half PPR actually makes this even tougher. I think you go Bucky Irving here. Desmond Ridder is starting. Revenge game for Desmond Ridder, but I don't have faith in Desmond Ridder, man. I'm okay going Bucky in a spot like that and risking it. Mike Evans, James Conner. Yes, we're not benching James Conner this week. And I actually really like Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is going to get to the 1,000-yard mark, guys. I think he's going to do it. He needs to get to like 100 yards per game or something. He's a top 10 wide receiver option, but you can't bench James Conner. Mari Mercado's out. Amazing spot for the Pats. He's got an incredible role right now. Love the app. Thanks, man. Start Kelsey or Laporte? Yeah, it's Kelsey. We're going Kelsey over Laporte. Hey, Sam, I need to bench one. AJ Brown, DJ Moore, Sutton, or Sharp. Oh, man. I've Hurts. This spot, it's okay, Javier. If you're already playing Hurts, just bench AJ Brown. And again, I like AJ Brown a ton, but you have two other top 10 wide receiver options, another top 10 running back option. I would not bench Sharp here either. Like, I think you got to play Sharp even over these awesome receiver options. The floor for Sharp is so strong. Wide receiver rankings. See, I got you with the wide receiver ranks. Hop back over to the wide receiver ranks here on the TikTok live. Seen some people ask for that too. If you're just joining us, guys, welcome to week 15. It is the fantasy football playoffs. We are still just getting started on this live stream. Got an hour and a half to go. We're going to have a guest joining us soon to talk through some of the tougher start sits and get some of his predictions for this week. Looking forward to that. If you're tuned into the TikTok live, guys, smash the follow button. I cannot see your comments if you don't follow. And also come to the YouTube live. That's in the TikTok bio to find the YouTube live. Better viewing experience there. I can pull up comments on screen on the YouTube live. I can share screen. We're looking at the game logs as we're talking through them on the YouTube live, man. So come over there as well. Tua or Donald? Yeah, it's Tua. It's Tua. And I have some fear about Tua today because of the offensive line. The offensive line is going to be without 2 of their starters today. So Tony Pollard and Brees, they're active. And Njoku is inactive. Keaton Mitchell is inactive. That makes me like my DraftKings lineup even more. I think my best ball teams are toast, guys. I have so much David Njoku. God, I mean, David, so rough. So rough that he's out here week 15. But yeah, 2 is a great option, guys. I mean, he's been, I think, underratedly balling in the last 4 games. Over 23 points in 4 straight games. He has the highest completion percentage in the NFL, and it's not even that close. 73% completion percentage. Gets Goff and Baker are kind of close, both over 70% as well. But Tyreek and Waddle, they're heating up, and the Texans secondary has not been good, especially against the slot. Waiver wire tight end for Njoku. Guys like Mayer, Pitts, Fant, Gesicki, Atkins, Chig, Strange, and others of that level. Yeah, Drew, you're not alone here. Let's pull up the tight end ranks. So Stone Cold Smart, he's in play. He's definitely in play. I think Brenton Strange, he's also in play. There's no Evan Ingram. Strange is going to play a lot. I think we've seen games already with Strange. Yeah, we've seen games where he played for this stretch here of 4 games. He had at least 9 points in 3 of them. He's definitely playable here versus the Jets. Not like the Jets defense is scary. No matter how many points they've allowed per game, they're not scary right now. So Strange is definitely in there. Juwan Johnson, Jordan Akins is in play too. I don't think I'd go Akins though with the weather report in that game. I think I'd probably go Strange over Jordan Akins at this point. And then Stone Cold Smart, he's in play too. I would play him over Chig, over Gesicki. I think I'd probably rank them as the top 2 desperation tight end options if you're really desperate right now with Njoku out, with Ingram out, some of the other tight end stuff going on. It's Brenton Strange, and then it's Stone Cold Smart. Jacoby or Marv, Sharp or Chuba? Yeah, this one's close too, Max. I think that you do kind of have to go Sharp over Chuba Hubbard. It's not an easy call because both these running backs are really elite options this week. Both elite options. Yahoo has Laporta projected 3 more points than Kraft. Yeah, the Yahoo projections are awful, man. So are the ESPN ones. This is part of the reason I started Walter Picks. Like, the projections are kind of nonsense a lot of the time. And yeah, Laporta and Kraft I think are close, but I don't think he should be projected 3 more than Kraft. Jacoby versus Marv. If you want the best possible fantasy projections, you got to download the Walter Picks app. It's free. It's in the TikTok bio. It's in the YouTube description. It's going to be better than what Yahoo and ESPN are showing you, I can promise. And guys, Yahoo and ESPN, a lot of times they don't even make their own projections. They're paying third parties to just get some random projections in there. Jacoby or Marv? It's Jacoby, I think. Jacoby has definitely got a safer floor versus the Falcons. We just saw the Falcons secondary struggle, but I don't trust Desmond Ridder. I do think Marvin Harrison has a much higher ceiling versus the Pats. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s air yards have been strong. Back-to-back weeks where we've seen Marvin Harrison Jr. get over half of the Cardinals' air yards. He's got back-to-back games over 21% target share. It definitely feels like out of the bye, they're trying to get Marvin more involved. And this is a good spot for him versus the Pats. The Pats secondary has been torched many times this season. I like James Conner on the ground too, but yeah, we saw Jalen Waddle torch them. He had 28 points. We saw Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua torch them over 25 points each. Brian Thomas Jr. had 22 when he played them. But yeah, it's a floor-ceiling decision there. Jacoby's got the safer floor, the better projection. Marv's got the higher ceiling, though, for sure. Bowers or McBride, both. Yeah, you can start both for sure, but I'm going McBride over Bowers with Desmond Ridder starting. It's a close call, though, for sure. They project really close. Down bad here, Sam. Swift, Javonte, Algier, or Hill. This is an interesting one because Swift is going to project the best, assuming he plays. He's not guaranteed to play, though. It's not a good matchup for Swift either. And then you got Justice Hill, who I think is in play here. I think it's between these two guys, and I got Justice Hill in my DraftKings lineup this week. There's no Keaton Mitchell this week. So it's just Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. Rasheen Ali, I don't know if he was active or not. Probably not. You're not crazy to go Justice Hill here. I don't think you probably want to risk it with DeAndre Swift, but you're really not crazy to go Justice Hill over Swift. And then the other question here, Otten or Ferg, Chargers are good versus tight ends. Yeah, the Chargers have been decent versus tight ends. It's still probably Otten. Let's look at this one, though. The Panthers have been awful versus tight ends. So this is a good spot for Jake Ferguson. Noah Gray and Kelsey played a big role in that. They combined over 34 points. Otten had 6. Calcaterra had 10 last week. Jake Ferguson, though, catching passes from Cooper Rush. I mean, it's tough to get super excited about that. He was up to 77% of the snaps last week, though, 20% target share. It's close, man. Definitely a close call. I think I'd still go Otten over Ferguson, but definitely really, really tight. And let's look at the matchup tab for the Chargers here quick, too. Neighbors or London? Yeah, I'd go London over Neighbors. I'm going Mahomes over Love. Tight end ranking, yeah, let's get to that. T. Higgins or London. Talk to the receivers here, too. Yeah, I think it's Drake London over T. Higgins. Definitely close call there, too. We'll go QBs, then tight ends. Yeah, so the Chargers, they're allowing the 10th fewest points per game to tight ends. Andrews did pretty well. The Chiefs' tight ends did fine last week. 9 catches, 71 yards. They haven't played the best tight ends either. This is the part of the thing, too. McBride only had 10. Kelsey had 2 good games. I said, okay, yeah, I think I'd go on over Ferg. Definitely a close call, though. Let's make sure we haven't missed any of the news. Kenneth Walker officially won't play. The Browns made a kicking change. Dustin Hopkins is inactive, and Riley Patterson will handle kicking duties. Hey, Sam, Caleb or Darnold? Yeah, it's Caleb over Darnold. It's Monty over Kamara, and it's Ladd over Neighbors. It's Ladd over Neighbors. I'm not playing Neighbors over Devontae Adams. I'm not playing Neighbors over Terry McLaurin. I'm not playing Neighbors over JSN, over Keenan Allen, over Garrett Wilson, over T. Higgins, over CeeDee Lamb. And guys, it's a good matchup for Neighbors, but what are the odds he can score on this offense with Tommy DeVito starting? It's part of the reason I really want to play the Ravens defense this week. Love the content you put out week to week. Thanks, man. I love using the Walter Picks app every week. Keep up the great work. Tough question starts it. Otten or it's Pittman. Yeah, we talked about this one, I think. I think I'd lean Pittman there. Pick 3, Devontae, Lamb, McLaurin, Judy, and DJ Moore. Devontae, Lamb, McLaurin, Judy, and DJ Moore. Man, you got to start DJ Moore. I don't think I'd play Judy here. Again, partially because of the weather. I moved Judy down my ranks in the YouTube live, you can see. So I would play, I think, all of these guys over Judy. I think it's Devontae, Lamb, and DJ. I think I'd bench McLaurin. I'd bench Judy. Yeah, I play Devontae Adams, Lamb, and DJ Moore. Thanks for the gifts and the TikTok live, guys. I appreciate it. Guys, if you're watching live on TikTok, let me know what rankings you want to see next. I will not be able to see your comment unless you're following. And also, you can get a better live stream viewing experience in the YouTube live, excuse me. Link to that is in the TikTok bio. Sam, I need an answer. Brees, Kamara, Neighbors start 2. Yeah, it's an interesting one, man. I think you probably bench Brees here. You're definitely playing Kamara here. You're definitely playing Kamara. So Neighbors versus Brees. It's Neighbors, man. Yeah, go Neighbors. Go Neighbors. It is a good matchup for Neighbors. I don't think he's got a good chance at a touchdown, but he leads the NFL in target share. He leads the NFL in targets. That gives him a pretty good floor. If you have a good option and you can sidestep the whole Brees risk, I think that's smart. We're going to have a guest joining us here in a second. Switch over to the left side of the live as Brett gets set up here. Pollard or Brees? Yeah, I'm going Brees over Pollard. Sorry if I just missed that comment here on the YouTube live. Sam, need some defense help. Chiefs or Arizona? Yeah, so the Chiefs are a really good option. I like the Cardinals too, but the weather report in that game makes me like the Chiefs, I think, a tiny bit more. Ridley, Ramondre, or Pollard? I'd go Ramondre there. Bucky or Tracy's definitely Bucky. I would bench Tracy if I could. Bolt fan, thanks for the follow on the TikTok live. Brees or Addison? I'm fine going Addison there. B-Rob or London? I'm not benching Brian Robinson Jr. Adams or Shakir? I'm going Adams. It's tough to bench guys in that game with the Bills lines because there's going to be so many points scored. But I'm okay going Adams over Shakir. Guys, the guys that you absolutely should not be benching. Don't bench Sharp. Don't bench Chuba Hubbard. Don't bench Rico Dowdle. Don't bench Brian Robinson Jr., the wide receiver position. I do not want to bench Cortland Sutton. I do not want to bench A.J. Brown. I don't want to bench DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Ladd, or Waddle. Kyler or Jaden? Yeah, this one's super close. I actually think I adjusted this one in the YouTube live earlier. Yeah, I did. I put Jaden one spot ahead of Kyler. Walter disagrees with me on this and has Kyler one spot ahead of Jaden Daniels. It's a really close one. Jaden Daniels' rushing prop line is higher. He's got a higher ceiling. I think there's similar matchups here too. I think Jaden Daniels personally. We got Bryce, our Titans creator, joining us here shortly. Should be fun to talk through some games with him. All right, let's get to a couple more start sits here, and then we'll bring on our first guest of the season. We're going to be testing out some more guests over the course of these next live streams as well. Caleb or Nix? Yeah, I think you got to go Caleb Williams there. Hey Sam, pick 2. Cup got 0 points. Still believe I can win. You gotta have some faith, of course. Evans, Lamb, or Monty? Oh God, yeah, I think you bench Lamb and you play Evans and Monty here. It's either Evans and Monty or Evans and Lamb. I don't think you bench Evans here. All right, let's bring on our guest here, Bryce. We're going to talk to him for about 10 minutes about some of the biggest games of the week and some of the guys that he thinks are his favorite sleepers at each position. Excited to talk to him. Bryce, man, how are we doing?
How are we doing? Thank you for having me on. I'm excited.
Excited as well, man. Excited as well to get a chance to breathe on the live stream, but also to get some of your thoughts, man, on some of the games this week. A lot of very, very good games. For those that don't know you on the live, if you're watching live on TikTok, come to the YouTube live where you can see Bryce, or you'll be able to hear him through the YouTube live if you're watching live on TikTok. But Bryce is our Titans creator, posting weekly fantasy content himself on the Titans.WalterPicks account. I've really enjoyed the content from you this season, Bryce. But excited to connect, man. Which games are you most excited to talk about first? Should we start with the Bills Lions?
Yeah, I would say Bills Lions probably. That's probably arguably the best game of the year so far. It's going to be electric. I've been back and forth all week, literally back and forth all week. Each side has a positive, each side has a negative. You're getting the Lions staying at home on extended rest, probably the best team in football this year. But then you got the Bills, who are healthier, coming off that bad loss. You know they're coming hungry. I'm torn, but I think I'm gonna roll with the Bills. Just healthier, and I think it's a Josh Allen MVP statement game one more time to kind of put the cherry on the top. Yeah, I don't know. I'm back and forth. I'm going Bills though. It's hard going against the Lions, but the defense really is banged up, and I'm gonna go with Josh Allen, the MVP.
Yeah, I lean on towards the Bills too, and I actually didn't mention this when I was talking through this game, but you brought it up, and it's definitely a good call, worth mentioning. The Lions defense is extremely injured right now. One of the most injured defenses in the NFL. They're missing about half their starters in this game, and they are just built for shootouts. We saw the Bills shootout last week. They're built for shootouts too. It's why this game has the highest over-under of the season. I think it's 55.5. Yeah. It's at right now, which is insane. I think I'd lean towards the Bills too, and I really think, Bryce, I think this is a Super Bowl preview. I think we're going to see this game again in about a month, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And if we don't, it's going to be because of the defenses on these teams, which always ends up mattering a bit more in the playoffs too. But both these offenses, they can keep up in any game. It doesn't matter how many points their defense allows. So yeah, I'm excited for this game too. What do you think about Keon Coleman's role in this game? To me, he's an interesting sleeper. We haven't really seen him since he broke out, in week 7 and week 8.
That's the thing too, is like we talked about the Lions being injured, but you look at the Bills, they're getting healthier. They were a couple of weeks ago, they were pulling out wins with literally Shakir, and that was it. And now they're getting everyone back, like you said. Coleman's back. You just look at the offense as a whole, defense as a whole. They're getting healthier, and I think that's a big piece, especially going into later this season. But transferring to Coleman, he had those games where he was an absolute star, and then he unfortunately got hurt right when he was catching hot. But I know the Lions are terrible against slot wide receivers, and I'm pretty sure Shakir is their main slot guy. So probably a bigger day from him than Coleman, but Coleman is a special talent, so that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think a sleeper, I would call him this week. And yeah, I think Shakir's the safest bet, but I also don't want to sleep on Amari Cooper's ceiling. Walter has his ceiling as one of the highest of the week, and we sort of saw it a little bit last week, but it's also just the matchup. The Lions have been crushed by receivers. They're extremely injured, and the Lions' offense is going to put up points in this game, which should be very good for the pass game too. Let's hop to the next game here that I want to talk to you about, the Bucs and the Chargers. Some really difficult start sits in this game too, which we can talk through. But what's your expectations for this Buccaneers Chargers game? I believe it's a 3-point spread.
Yeah, I'm rolling with the Chargers here at home. I've actually past couple weeks I've been saying a lot that this Chargers team is really, could say, overrated or overplaying, overvalued, whichever way you say. But I feel like this is a good spot. They're off, I believe, back to back. They definitely lost last week. They might be off back to back losses. And then you get this Bucks team that, yeah, they're getting healthier, but they played no one in the last couple weeks, and they're barely squeaking out wins. So I think this is a good get right spot for the Chargers at home. Um, hopefully, hopefully the defense keeps playing how they should, because I know Baker's been playing well. But yeah, I think the Chargers get the home win here, and it's a good spot for them, I think.
Yeah, so the Chargers, they just barely lost to the Chiefs in their last game. They really should have won the classic Chiefs game there. But yeah, this is a good Chargers defense really over the course of the season. They've let up like a little bit over the last month, but still definitely playing like one of the better defenses in the league. And Ladd's going to play, man. And how do you feel about him in fantasy? We got him projected as wide receiver 12 here in the Walter Picks app. Are you confident with him coming off?
I don't know if anyone in here remembers or anything, but when we had our get together in August, when we said like biggest favorite rookie or whatever, I said Lad's been my guy since day one. And I still love him. It took him some time to break out, but we've seen the last couple of weeks he's been an absolute machine against the Falcons. That was 2 weeks ago, I believe. Against the Falcons, he looked awesome. Got hurt. But he's been looking like an absolute star, and I don't see that slowing down. I mean, I think he's the guy in this offense, and Herbert and him and their connection has only gotten better. So really, Lad's a wide receiver one in my book. I love him.
Yeah, I do remember you chose Ladd. I think our Browns creator said Jamari Thrash, which is the only time anyone's ever heard his name was in that video. But the Ladd McConkey is really a must start here in the fantasy playoffs. Like at some points in the fantasy season, you do have to take some risk, and there's different levels of risk, with guys like Brees and Bucky this week for sure with their respective injuries. But Ladd McConkey had 50% of the targets in the last game he played, and now he gets a Buccaneer secondary. This is also an extremely injured defense, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm very in on Herbert this week. My DraftKings lineup, I'll pull it up here in a sec. I got Ladd in that too. I'm going with a triple Charger stack here with Herbert, Ladd, Palmer, and Stone Cold Smart. Stone Smart's middle name, by the way, is Cole. Stone Cold Smart. Absolutely unreal name. But yeah, I feel very good about Ladd. And I think you just have to start him in fantasy this week. We got him projected ahead of CeeDee Lamb. That's not an easy call to make, but I do think Ladd needs to be started for sure. All right, but one other game to get to before we get to some of your sleepers. I want to talk about this Eagles-Steelers game a bit. What's your expectation in this one? The Eagles are 5.5-point favorites in this game. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, definitely think Eagles win. Spread wise scares me. I definitely do think the Eagles win. Last week the Steelers looked pretty good without Pickens. I think this week it hurts them a lot more. Eagles run defense has been very stout this year. I think they make Russ throw it through the air, and I just think it's a bad offensive game from the Steelers. Really, is kind of like where my head is at. I just can't really see the Steelers going into Philly and putting up 20 points and coming out with a win. But going off of that, I actually saw something that Pittsburgh hasn't beat Philly in 10 straight times.
Wow.
So they just can't beat them, and I think Philly has their number at home, and I just think the Philly's better overall team, and the matchup fits well for them, and they can, I believe, win the division with a win today. So
yeah, I think you could argue that the Eagles are the most talented roster in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think they're a really underrated candidate to make the Super Bowl right now. Yeah. Their defense is so much better than last year. Probably the most improved defense. I mean, this defense was awful last season, especially in the secondary, and suddenly they're one of the best defenses in the league. And yeah, I agree with you. I'm just pulling up the Steelers tab here in the start sit tool on the Walter Picks app. Like, who's going to beat the Eagles here? I mean, it's going to have to be the running backs. That's going to be extremely difficult. Mike Williams was sort of in the George Pickens role last week. He's going to have to try to make some plays against a really good secondary. I mean, the second best receiver on this team is Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson. I mean, this suddenly like kind of looks like the Saints team, and it's gonna be tough to
I will say going off of that though is take what I say about the Steelers with a grain of salt, because I picked them I had them like 8 wins in 8-9 wins in the off season. I picked against them multiple times this year, and they just continue to prove me wrong. So
Yeah.
I would be shocked if they score over 20 points today, but take that with a grain of salt, because they own me.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. I think they proved a lot of people wrong. And like you said at the start, I don't feel great about the spread. 5.5 points for the Steelers. Like, they're good at keeping these games close. But
Yeah.
I also, the other guy just to touch on here that I have a lot of confidence in, that I know a lot of people are nervous about, is AJ Brown. I'm definitely starting him in all leagues. Like, he's a top 10 wide receiver to me. He still has an elite floor. He is still number 5 in yards per game this season. For how everyone's thinking about him, there's only 4 receivers with more yards per game. It's Nico, Chase, Jefferson, and Puka. That's it.
Yep.
I mean, he really is in that elite tier of receivers. There just hasn't been enough pass volume in some of these weeks. And it's possible that happens again. Our concerns for the Steelers offense, but even without the pass volume, he's an elite option. And suddenly things go a little bit differently than we expect, and the pass volume's there. Like, AJ Brown's going to smash. He's going to go over 100 yards. He's going to score a touchdown. He's going to be a guy you want in your fantasy lineups. And he's, to me, an elite floor, elite ceiling option still. I'm not panicking on AJ Brown personally. So yeah, I'm still starting him, which may be a good segue into some sleepers you have, Bryce, for us this week before you have to run.
Yeah. So first one, I saw he was on your DraftKings lineup, and he's slowly not becoming a sleeper. It's becoming a popular name this week, but I think Chuba Hubbard can finish as a top 5 back this week. I don't know where he is on the Walter Picks app where they have him, but
Yeah.
I think he has top 5 this week written all over him. And like, some people would debating him if you should start him, or yeah, I would start him pretty much over 95% of guys. I mean, this Cowboys run defense in the first place has been bad all year, allowing, I think, the 4th most fantasy points to running backs.
Yeah.
And then you just look at his role. He's been a dog all season, but that was with Miles Sanders, Jonathan Brooks stealing work. They're both gone. It's his backfield, and I think he's super underrated. First game the Panthers are favored in, so hopefully it should be a good game script. I think Chuba can go for 20, maybe 25 points today.
Yeah, definitely like it. Yeah, he's projected for 18.6 in the Walter Picks set. That's running back 10, but I definitely agree with you. Top 5 upside for Chuba Hubbard. I got him right at the top of tier 2. Like, him versus Zach Sharp, I think, is close. Him versus Achane, I think, is close. And his floor is just incredible. His backup in this game is Mike Boone.
Yeah.
I mean, he might not come off the field. He literally might play 100% of the snaps. That is in the cards for him. He had 30 touches last week, could easily get to 30 touches again. And that was against the Eagles, man. He played pretty well against the Eagles. 21 points versus this elite Eagles defense. Had 15 versus the Chiefs. Now he gets the Cowboys, man. Yeah, definitely could be the running back 1. Like, that's the type of ceiling I think he has. Definitely a must start. He's elite
the
winner.
Type of players that he's the type of players you play against, and that's why you lose fantasy, because guys like Chuba Hubbard will have a 35-point game and he'll ruin your season.
Yeah, he really was one of the best picks of the season. His advance rate in the best ball drafts I was doing, one of the highest among all players, was Chuba Hubbard. And he's going like round 10, 11, 12. And obviously people had thought that Jonathan Brooks would come back sooner. Obviously he's out now. But yeah, that's a good one. How about another position? Any sleepers at other positions you like?
So I feel like he's became a sleeper. Kind of outside of Chuba Hubbard, he's kind of lost love, but I believe in Malik Neighbors a lot this week. I know people will always go back to his quarterback situation, and he's had a really up and down year, but the target share is through the roof, and the way I think this game plays out today, I'd be shocked if he doesn't get at least 12 targets and puts up at least 15 points. He's been a target machine, and now they're 16-point underdogs. Feel like they're going to be in a passing game script pretty much all game. And this Ravens secondary has been beat all season. I think Malik is so talented, and I think he's got a 15, 20-point game written all over him. People considering him wide receiver 2 flex at this point. I think he could be a wide receiver 1 type numbers this week.
Yeah, I like that call. I like that call a lot. And we can maybe talk through some specific head-to-head start-sit decisions with Neighbors. But the targets are there. I mean, he's going to lead the NFL in targets already. Like, he's just going to. The season still has 4 weeks left, and he's going to lead the NFL in target share. The problem is the touchdowns, And this, I mentioned it earlier in the live, but this is the lowest. The Giants have the lowest projected team total from Vegas in the sportsbooks odds today that we've seen since
of the year. Oh,
Since longer than that. Since Kendall Hinton started at quarterback for the Broncos. I mean, it's bleak right now for the Giants because not only are they starting Tommy DeVito, they also have the worst offensive line in the NFL. On top of that, it's literally neighbors, and that's it here. And yeah, it's a great matchup. I agree. He's probably going to get around 12 targets. It gives him a good floor. It's just, what's the touchdown ceiling? Like he's going to have to make some big plays, which he's certainly capable of. But we haven't seen him score since week 3. I mean, that's been the problem for fantasy. He leads the NFL in targets easily, but he's only 10th in fantasy points per game. He leads the NFL in catches per game. Like he's number 1 because of the targets.
It sounds like a good week for Malik and Trey McBride to score.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Would you start Neighbors over T. Higgins?
Probably.
Neighbors over someone like Keenan Allen. Neighbors over JSN.
Yeah, I would start him over all of them.
Neighbors over. What about Neighbors versus McConkey, who we were just talking about?
Lad.
Yeah, I would go Lad there too. Yeah, I think Neighbors versus McLaurin is close too.
Yeah.
I was mentioning Noah Brown's out this week. He's been getting like 18% target share this season. That's actually a pretty big deal. I think I'd probably lean Terry there personally. JSN and Keenan. Honestly, Neighbors versus JSN, that one's really tough, man. I would be. I think
it's just the problem not starting JSN is kind of you're riding away from the hot hand,
right,
which is like kind of stick with the guy that's got you there. But yeah.
Any other sleepers you want to share before you hop off?
One more that kind of leads into something, but I like Kyler a lot this week. This Patriots defense, they're a below average team against quarterbacks, but if you look at their games, it's a lot of weak quarterbacks. Against any decent quarterback, they've really struggled. Kyler, they're all back to losses. Kyler at home, kind of in a must-win game. I like the matchup for him. Like the rushing upside. I think Kyler has a good week this week.
Yeah, this is a good call for sure. And Kyler's been, I feel like, a tough guy to get a grasp on a little bit this season. He's been pretty
very up and down.
But I agree with you. Like, just looking at the matchups, just hone in on the last 3 games, man. There's been very few defenses better for quarterbacks than the Patriots in just the last 3 games. Stafford threw up 28 points, 4 TDs. Tua threw 4 touchdowns. He had 28 points too. And then Anthony Richardson, he threw 2 touchdowns and ran for 1 too. And, that's notable, obviously, with Kyler and his legs. The thing with Kyler that's been so inconsistent is the rushing. We've seen games where he smashes as a rusher, over 50 rushing yards, and several games with rushing touchdowns. And then other games, he's just not running at all. And I really think they got to get him running more. He leads the NFL among quarterbacks in yards per carry. I actually think Drake May technically is ahead of him, but he just doesn't have enough volume to qualify. But like when Kyler runs, good things happen. They got to scheme him, I think, more rushing moving forward if they want to get the most out of their offense. But yeah, Kyler's definitely a good option this week. I think Kyler versus Jaden Daniels, super tough start sit. Yeah. Walter's got Kyler ahead in that one. They both project 17.7. I got Jaden Daniels just because his rushing prop line is better. I got more confidence in his rushing production, which is huge, obviously, for fantasy in someone's floor. But yeah, Kyler's definitely a good option. What would you do in a spot like this between Kyler and Daniels? Would you go Kyler?
I have JD. I have JD at 4, Kyler at 5, Hurts at 6. So neck and neck, kind of all similar to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. Bryce, thank you so much for hopping on, man. It's great to chat through some of the big games, some of the sleepers of the week. And yeah, would love to have you on the lives in the future too.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.
Have a good one, man. All right. That was Bryce, our Titans creator. That was a lot of fun getting someone else's thoughts. He definitely changed my perspective a bit, at least on Malik Neighbors. Certainly the floor is there for Neighbors. We're going to get back to the start sit comments here in this live stream. Let's switch over the app to the right side of the screen. Now that we got back to one of us here. What props we taking this week? Yeah, we'll talk about that as well. Hey, Sam, I started Purdy and Cup. Yikes. Start Pacheco or Stevenson. Yeah, this one's close for the running backs. Hop over to the running back ranks. If you're watching live on TikTok, guys, let me know in the comments what position rankings you want to see next. I can't see your comments unless you're following, so hit that follow button. Also, guys, if you want to follow Bryce and the content he produces, some of the best fantasy content out there, at Titans.WalterPicks on both TikTok and Instagram, you can find them. So let's do Pacheco versus Stevenson here. Let's check this one out. So let's go to the running back ranks. TikTok subscribers, by the way, we're going to get there to the TikTok subscriber mode here in like 15 minutes or so. All right, we got Ramondre versus Pacheco. Yeah, it's Pacheco. It's got to be Pacheco, I think, over Ramondre. I think Ramondre probably projects a bit better volume-wise, but I think Pacheco has a higher ceiling And I like the weather for Pacheco too. What if I have to choose between May and Jameis? Oh, God, you can't play Jameis in that weather. You can't play Jameis in the weather. How are we feeling about Brees? I'm pretty nervous for him, man. I think he's a high ceiling, high risk play. I think that's what Brees is. I think that you can play Brees and you should play Brees in a lot of different spots because the ceiling's there. He's playing the Jags and it's Brees Hall. But the floor's there too, man. And it's going to be somewhat of a 3-man rotation, most likely. And there's always the re-injury risk too with Brees. So definitely an interesting Brees Hall decision in fantasy this week. AR or Baker? Yeah, I think it's A-Rich over Baker. Chase Brown or Justin Jefferson? Oh, God, Carter, you got to start both these guys, but probably Chase Brown. Afternoon Sam, Cooper, Dell, or Reed. Already starting Shakir. Yeah, you can't start Reed. You really can't start Reed. I don't think. I'd go Cooper. I think I'd go Cooper over Dell. Ferguson or Smart. Yeah, Stone Cold Smart. His middle name's Cole. We learned that this week, and now I can't forget it. But yeah, it's Ferguson over Smart. Sam, Walter picks up has gotten me to the playoffs. Let's go, Josh. 2 questions for my guillotine league. Burrow or Daniels? It's Burrow. Then choose one of the following. Kelsey, Hall, Garrett Wilson, DK. Thanks again. Yeah, this one's Garrett Wilson. Go Garrett Wilson and Burrow. You really can't bench Burrow right now. Cook or Waddle? Yeah, I'd go Waddle over James Cook. Rico rush yards. Yep, like the Rico rush yards. So yeah, someone was asking about the free player props in this live stream. We've been cashing the free player props this season. We're at 63% on the free player props. I like both of Brian Robinson Jr.'s props today. Brian Robinson Jr. over 77.5 rushing yards. Brian Robinson Jr. over half a touchdown. I also like Chuba Hubbard over 2.5 receptions. We just had Bryce on, our Titans creator, on live just moments ago. He talked about how he liked Chuba Hubbard this week too. That makes me feel even better about this receptions line for Chuba Hubbard. You say must hit Jameis, but what if he's my best option ranking wise? Who else should I go with? Yeah, so these rankings were before the official weather report got worse for that Browns-Chiefs game. I would play Stroud over Winston. I think I would go Drake May over Winston. Again, 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts and scattered rain showers in that Browns-Chiefs game. That is not good for Jameis. I still think I'd go Geno over Jameis. I think it's close. I'd still play Jameis over Bryce, over Levis, over Russ, over Kirk. So, yeah, and in some spots you're going to have to start Jameis depending on who you got. But I do feel worse about Jameis than I did at the start of the live. Really need help to win my round 1 matchup. Yeah, 1 round at a time, guys. This is the fantasy playoffs. We got to grind out the wins. I'm playing Chuba Hubbard over Montgomery. Yeah, I'm not benching Chuba Hubbard. Pick 2 out of 3, Bucky, Amari, or Brian Thomas Jr. And then should I start Tua over Daniels? So pick 2 out of 3 here. Yeah, this one's tough, man. This is tough. Bucky and Brees, obviously in similar spots today. I didn't get Bryce's thoughts on Bucky. I meant to when we talked about that Chargers game, but we got Bucky Irving here, Brian Thomas Jr., who I do think has a solid floor, and then Amari Cooper, who I think has one of the highest ceilings in fantasy this week versus the Lions. Yeah, you bench Bucky. Bench Bucky Irving here. Sidestep the injury risk. Go with Brian Thomas Jr., go with Amari Cooper. Ladd or Devontae Adams. Yeah, so we're not benching Ladd. We are not benching Ladd. Ladd is going to play, and he needs to be in your starting lineup because he's going to play. And I actually updated the ranks here on the YouTube live. Watching live on TikTok. We're also live on YouTube where I can adjust the ranks as the live goes on. And I got Ladd up to wide receiver 12, wide receiver 13 range. Brees Hall or Aaron Jones? Yeah, it's Aaron Jones there for sure. I'd go Aaron Jones. Waddle or Goss? Yeah, it's definitely Waddle. Definitely Waddle over Goss. That one's not that close. Did I miss the prop picks, Tyler? Yeah, you did. I like the Brian Robinson Jr. props, over 77.5 rush yards, over half a touchdown, and over 2.5 receptions for Chuba Hubbard. Waddle or Neighbors? I'm going Waddle over Neighbors too, I think. I'm going Waddle over Neighbors. We just heard Bryce talk about Neighbors. I agree the floor is there for Neighbors because he leads the NFL in targets, and the Ravens secondary has been torched all season. I just don't think there's a real touchdown ceiling for Neighbors. It's going to be really tough for him to score on an offense that might not score today. Chase Brown or Chuba Hubbard? Man, I mean, you got to start both those guys. I actually have Chuba Hubbard 1 spot ahead of Chase Brown. I would go Chuba Hubbard over Chase Brown. Feels weird, but both guys need to be started. Happy playoff week, Gabe. Happy playoff week to you too. It is the fantasy football playoffs. This is what it is all about, man. We're over 3 hours in this live. I feel like we're just getting started still. Obviously, we got 50 minutes till kickoff. I'm probably going to take this live this week since it's the playoffs. I want to get to as much as we possibly can Because this could be it, guys. This could be it. You got to win to keep going on in the fantasy playoffs. James Cook, Brees, Bucky, Rachaad White, Judy. Pick 2. Man, I don't hate going Bucky and Rachaad together sometimes. This is a really difficult one here. I think James Cook over Brees, James Cook over Bucky, James Cook over Rachaad White. I'm scared about Judy with that weather. Man. And then I would go Brees over Bucky. I have Rachaad White ahead of. I think you go James Cook and Rachaad White. Go James Cook and Rachaad White here. Super tough call. I am going Waddle over Bucky. Half PPR makes it tougher, but I'm still going Waddle there. Hey, I'm not sure what to do. Pick 2. Neighbors, Ladd, Bucky, Ridley. Yes, the first 2. Got to go the first 2. And then Chiefs or Jets defense. Play the Chiefs defense. Play the Chiefs defense for sure. Thanks, Sam. Achane or Justin Jefferson? Oh, God. Carter, you got to play both those guys. Tank Dell or Devontae Smith or Elijah Moore? Yes, Elijah Moore is a very good sleeper this week. I actually think a very good sleeper. Still probably got to go Devontae Smith here, though. Stroud or Mahomes? Yeah, with the weather, this one's a little bit closer. I still think it's probably Mahomes. With weather, I'm okay going Thielen over Judy. Yeah, so again, let's just run through the weather report again for this Chiefs-Browns game. It's going to be the worst weather game of the week. It is 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts. 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts in this Chiefs-Browns game in Cleveland and scattered rain showers. So throughout the game, there's going to be heavy rain and wind gusts over 30. Moderately concerned. I think it's a fine thing to help you make some tough start-sit decisions and lean away from the pass catchers in this game. That's Judy. That's Jordan Akins. I still have some confidence in Elijah Moore's role playing out of the slot. Like the short passing game should be less affected than the deep passing game. Help, Cowboys or Vikings defense? Yeah, I think you go the Vikings defense here. McCormick or D-Hop? Definitely D-Hop there. Kyler or Herbert? Yeah, I'm going Herbert over Kyler. I do not want to bench Herbert. Full PPR, Ladd or Brees? Got to go Ladd. I'm not worried about Ladd. I'm not worried about him. They said they're optimistic he plays. I think he plays. I thought he was going to play last week. Got a tweet here from one of the NFL reporters that Brandon Graham apologized for his radio comments about the Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown relationship, and I guess they dapped each other up in front of the team to show that everything is good. Squeaky wheel narrative is so live here for AJ Brown here in week 15. Thanks so much for the advice. Did you say Tua over Daniels? Yeah, it's a close call between Tua and Daniels, and I don't think you're crazy to go Daniels over Tua because the rushing is clearly better, obviously, for Jay Daniels than Tua, who has absolutely nothing in the rushing category, but Tua's been better over the last month, and I think Tua is the better option today. He's got a good matchup here versus the Texans. There's 2 offensive linemen out for the Dolphins. That's the only fear for the Dolphins offense falling apart today, but if he can get the ball out quick, which he's very good at doing, he leads the NFL in completion percentage. He's got a good chance to go over 20 again. He's been over 23 points in 4 straight games. And the Texans have been pretty torched by receivers this season, especially out of the slot. That's why I like Waddle a lot today. Waddle versus T. Higgins. I'm going Waddle over T. Higgins today. Seeing that one in the TikTok live. Ramondre or Judy with the weather, full PPR. Yeah, man. I mean, this is a floor ceiling thing too. With the weather though, it's I think okay to go Ramondre here. Ramondre's got a pretty good chance at 15 plus, 20 plus touches. Judy projects a bit better, but the floor is better for Ramondre. I'm okay going Ramondre and playing it safe there. Waddle or Keenan? Yeah, that one's Waddle too. I think over Keenan Allen. You worried about Hopkins? Yeah, a tiny bit worried, but I'm more worried about Xavier Worthy than Hopkins with the weather report. Matt, how we doing? Good to see you in the YouTube live. Thanks for all your help this season. I got you, man. I appreciate you as well. And I know you're very active in the Discord. Appreciate that too. For all the Walter Pick subscribers out there, you gotta be active in the Discord, man. I'll be in there right after this live stream, making sure we get to all the Discord start sits. Hurts or Williams. The link to the Discord, by the way, is in the YouTube description. Jalen Hurts or Caleb Williams, man, this is not an easy one. I think you still have to go Hurts. I mean, it's a kind of a scary game situation for Hurts, but I mean, just the rushing touchdowns for Hurts are impossible to ignore in fantasy. I mean, almost every single week he's getting pushed in. Like that, somehow again, the Eagles lead the NFL in times being tackled at the 1. I mean, it's truly uncanny. Back-to-back seasons. The Steelers are the number 1 defense versus quarterbacks this season. Burrow had the best game, only 20 points. And it's not like they played horrible quarterbacks, not the best. I mean, Lamar only at 16, Daniels only at 8. That's pretty scary. For Jalen Hurts, that makes me want to lean Caleb Williams a bit. And last time Caleb Williams played the Vikings too, he popped off 27 points, his second best game of the season. Had 340 yards, his second most of his career. Man, I mean, the ceiling is actually higher, I think, for Caleb Williams. And I do like A.J. Brown this week. A.J. Brown versus Ladd, I do think I'd go A.J. Brown. Man, if you want to split the difference here, I don't think it's crazy to go Caleb Williams and A.J. Brown rather than stacking A.J. Brown and Hurts and getting that correlated upside and downside. So yeah, maybe you go Caleb and A.J. Brown here. I think that's what I would do. And I want to start Ladd, I really do, but I'm not playing him over A.J. Brown. I'm not doing that. Start two, Cook, Pacheco, Taylor. Yeah, let's hop over to the running back ranks here again. I think that you got to play. Yeah, wow, these guys are all three back-to-back in the ranks. I think you probably go JT and Pacheco, honestly, over Cook with the weather report there for the Chiefs. Hey, love the bids. Thanks, man. Baker or Rodgers? I'm going up against Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams. I don't hate going Rodgers if that's the case, honestly. That's a pretty good defense move, and I think it is probably Rodgers over Baker anyways. They're one spot apart, 0.1 projection apart. Yeah, I'm fine going Rodgers in that spot. Otten or Ferguson? Yeah, we talked about this one earlier. I do think it's Otten, but it's close. Breece Hall versus Flowers. Tough call there. Flowers projects a bit better, but I'm definitely nervous for Flowers. Good matchup for Breece. Injury risk with Breece. Man, I think I'd go Breece over Flowers. I'm pretty concerned for Flowers. DraftKings lineup question: pick one: Nico, Achane, or Mixon. Oh God. Yeah, this is a tough call. I was thinking about doing the Dolphins double stack with Tyreek and Waddle and Tua in my DraftKings lineup this week, but it's just too pricey to try to fit Nico in there too. But I think it's Mixon. I think you go Mixon over these guys. Hey, Sam, long-time sub. Pick one. Judy, Mooney, Ridley. Thanks. Yeah, so with the weather report for the Chiefs game, I'm definitely a bit panicked on Judy. 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts, scattered heavy rain showers, but there's no Cedric Tillman. There's no David Njoku. Like, Judy could see a 40% target share in this game. Nobody would blink an eye. I think Elijah Moore gets very involved too. But yeah, it's Judy. It's still Judy. In a spot like this, I still would go Judy. Moore or Waddle? Yeah, I'm going DJ Moore. I like DJ Moore a lot. I like Waddle a lot too, but I like DJ Moore more than Waddle. Mahomes or AR? I'd go AR over Mahomes. Tracy Cook or D-Hop in full PPR? I think you go James Cook here over Tracy and over D-Hop. Tight end list. Yeah, I got you the tight end list. David Njoku is out this week. Laporta, Otten, Hunter Henry. I feel like Laporta has a good chance to score. He definitely does. I think I would go Hunter Henry, though, still. Henry doesn't have the worst chance to score either. But, yeah, Laporta's probably got the highest ceiling of this group. I would give you that in that game between the Lions and the Bills. A likely Super Bowl preview, if you ask me. Hurts or Tua? Yeah, I'm going Tua. Yeah, I'm going Tua over Hurts. Smart, Calcaterra, or Schultz? Let's do Schultz. I haven't seen any Schultz questions, but Cade Stover's out. That's maybe a big deal for Schultz. Let's look this up. How much has Stover been playing? Because he's out. He played 58% of snaps in their last game, over a third of the snaps in most of these games. This could be big for Schultz. So we got Schultz, Smart, Stone Cold Smart, and then Calcaterra with Dallas Goedert out. Yeah, Schultz projects the best, man. I'm going Schultz. I think I go Schultz here over Smart, over Calcaterra. Sam, we both made the playoffs thanks to you and the app. Let's go. Start who at flex, DK or Thomas Jr.? Also, Chiefs or Jets? Yeah, go Chiefs defense, Dad. Chiefs over Jets. The Chiefs get Jameis Winston, who is about as likely to throw an interception every week than anyone, in a 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gust game with heavy rain scattered throughout. Now it's running BTJ if I go Jets D, right? Yeah, probably not. I don't love stacking guys against your own defense, but I think it's DK Metcalf anyway. I would go Metcalf over Brian Thomas Jr. It's definitely close, but DK's got a higher ceiling, man. The offense is definitely more trustworthy than Mac and Cheese Mac Jones. Throwing the ball to Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. had a 40% target share last game. 40%. We're projecting a 31% target share this week. He still only scored 16 points. Like, I think he's more of a floor play. Metcalf, I think, has an underrated floor, but also a pretty good ceiling. Traded for CMC, so my running back decisions are really bad. Can you rank these guys PPR on floor? Hill, yes, it's Hill. Go Hill. He's playing the Giants. Keaton Mitchell's out. He's playing the Giants as a 17-point favorite. I mean, he's got a good chance to score and have a real role in this game. I would go Justice Hill for sure. Half PPR, Judy, DK, Keenan, or Najee? Man, yeah, this is between the middle two guys. I think it's okay to bench Judy in a spot like this. It's probably Keenan, though. Half PPR, it actually might be closer. A lot of the points come through receptions for Keenan. Yeah, it is closer, but yeah, it's Keenan. Keenan does have a pretty good shot at a touchdown versus the Vikings. Pass funnel defense with the Vikings there too. I'd bench Brian Thomas Jr. I think here I'd play JT and Waddle. Running back list. Yeah, I got you the running back list. If you guys are watching live on TikTok, guys, hit the follow button. If you're watching live on YouTube, smash the like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going to be live next Sunday, next Thursday as well. Sam, Jennings hurt me. Yeah, you're not alone, man. Almost every player in that game Thursday night hurt everybody. I mean, that might have been the worst game of the season. I'm still not over Devo dropping that. Pick up Tua to start over Hurts this week? Yep, I would. I don't want to drop Hurts, but I would pick up Tua and start him over Hurts. Vikings or Baltimore defense? It's Ravens. Add the Ravens defense. Yes, you can drop Olave now. Yeah. Add the Ravens defense. There's no better defense this week, for sure. Hey, Sam, thanks for the weather report. I got you. Yeah, pick 2. Judy, Addison, Harrison, Thielen. Yeah, so Thielen versus Judy. Let me actually just refresh here. Thielen versus Judy, I feel like is really close, and it's okay to go Thielen there. I think Judy probably still going to project better than Thielen, even with the weather report. Man, Judy projects so well with these receivers out. He projects even better now. Addison versus Marv. Yeah, so Marv is going to be benched here. You said pick 2, yeah. Yeah, go Judy and Addison. Bench Thielen. Go Judy and Addison. I think it makes sense, even with the weather report, without Cedric Tillman, without David Njoku. Kicker question, Weatherman Sam. It's time of year for kicker questions. Based on weather and injuries, do we like Tucker, Reichard, Lutz, or Butker? Any other sleepers? Like, yeah, let's pull up the kicker ranks here. I don't think you can play Butker with a lot of confidence. First game back and 30-plus mile-an-hour wind gusts and rain is not good for him. Yeah, it's Reichard. Go Reichard. Kicker 2 versus the Bears. He's been great this season. Not great the last couple of games, but he's been good other than that. I'm okay going Reichard there. I think it's a dome game too, right? BTJ, Tracy, Ridley, or Njoku at flex. Njoku's out. This is Brian Thomas Jr. definitely over Ridley. Go Tyreek over Brees, like easily. Wide receiver ranks. I play Kyler over Darnold. Yep. I play Waddle over JMO. I play Judy over JMO too. Sam, I need your help. Pick 2. Garrett Wilson, Sutton, Alvin, Jalen, Waddle. I think it's Sutton and Waddle here. Man, Sutton and Garrett Wilson or Sutton and Waddle? Yeah, it's Sutton and Waddle. I'd go Sutton and Waddle. Bench 1. Darnold, Kyler, or Richardson? Yeah, bench Darnold. Play Kyler and Richardson. Play the rushing guys. Hall or Judy? Need you here, Sam. Full PPR. Yeah, I think you got to go Judy over Brees Hall. Man, it's a tough call. Man, benching Brees Hall in the fantasy football playoffs is never going to feel good. He gets the Jags too, but Judy's been on fire. Judy's got a tough weather game, but such a good projected role with Cedric Tillman and Njoku out. So, yeah, I think it's Judy still. Kyler or Richardson? I'd lean Kyler over Richardson. Judy, Neighbors, Wilson, JSN, full PPR. This one I think is Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson versus Neighbors is pretty close. Yeah, I'd go Garrett Wilson here. I think over Judy with the weather. Man, it's a tough call there. But yeah, I think I'd go Garrett Wilson. Start Algier or Ford. Yeah, I'm okay going Algier over Ford. I'm playing Tua over Kyler. I really do like Tua in that spot against the Texans this week. Guys, YouTube Live, that's my time. Time's the most valuable thing we have. Good luck in the first round of the fantasy playoffs. I'm going to be live for like 10, 15 more minutes on the TikTok Live. If you want to tune in there, it'll be on TikTok subscriber only comment mode here momentarily. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. We'll be back live Thursday, back live Sunday. I'll get to this one real quick from Sam Vetter here. McLeod or Freiermuth, tight end premium. Yeah, McLeod. Go McLeod. McLeod had 8 catches last week. I think you go McLeod. No Pickens, but still, I think it's McLeod. It's not like Freiermuth's going to get that many catches. I would go Hawkinson over Kraft, too, with the tight end question here. That's my time, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back live next week. Good luck, everybody.